Hey guys. Here is what if Naruto woke up in the modern world. Naruto never asked to wake up in a world where everything he knew did not exist. He wants to go home, but is home the past from which he came from, or by the side of the girl he fell in love with? Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1. Time of Your Life. The intense sunlight persistently trying to prise open his eyelids was a sure sign that he had slept in. In fact, he was probably late for something. Too many things to keep track of, too little mind capacity. Jiraiya would kick his ass till he was sorry, he bet. The old pervert could be frighteningly severe when the occasion called for it, which it did. Too bad. Jiraiya should know by now that his apprentice was not a morning person. Naruto rolled over onto his side, turning away from the sunlight, fashioning a pillow out of his arms. He didn't feel like opening his eyes just yet. It had been a while since he had been able to sleep in like this. It was a nice change. Judging from the amount of noise and the commotion that reached his ears, the village was awake and running, as it always was at early hours these days. The village hardly slept anymore, not since it had been thrown in a state of constant chaos. His bed felt curiously pricklier than usual. Grumbling, Naruto reached over his shoulder for his blanket and groped thin air. He felt around a bit more. It had probably slipped off the bed again. He must have been sleeping very deeply. With all the tension that had been straining his body, it was definitely what he would have prescribed himself if he was a medic nin. Nothing beat a good night's sleep and a bowl of hot ramen for breakfast. At least the Chiraku's was one of the few businesses still open. His pleasurable reverie was disrupted as something started poking his backside. Naruto swatted blindly at the disturbance. 5 more minutes, he groaned. The poking stopped, and the blonde sighed in relief. They must have heard him. But now there was something wet rubbing against his face. And licking it. Arg! What the hell? Naruto floundered for a moment before he sat up and scrubbed at his face, nose wrinkled. He could hear a voice calling nearby, gradually rising in volume. Sarge? Where'd you? Hey, come on, boy, leave him alone. He's been here for days, let's go, Sarge. We're going to be late. It almost sounded like Kiba talking to Akamaru, Naruto mused to himself. Almost. He opened his eyes to see a black hound bounding back to its owner. The young man looked impatient. Squinting against the glare of the sun, Naruto saw that there were other morning dwellers wandering about. He hadn't seen the park so lively since. Wait. Konoha's main park, along with most of the hospital, had been ravaged by the Akatsuki's latest invasion attempt. No one had the heart or resources to rebuild it, and even if they did, it was impossible that they could have managed it in one night. The minor details started to jump out at Naruto as he surveyed his surroundings under a new light. It was too loud, too crowded, and none of the faces he could see were familiar. More importantly, the people were smiling, content with life. They couldn't possibly be happy during a war period of dire consequences. Everything clambered into Naruto's mind at once, making no sense at all, but for one realization. This was not home. Naruto shakily got to his feet. His limbs felt detached, as if he hadn't used them for a long time. Jelly legs, old man Hokage used to call them. He missed that old geezer. One glance told him that he was not in Konoha. There were just too many differences between the Leaf Village and this place. Trying to pinpoint each and every one of them was making his head spin. The disparity spread beyond terrain and the inhabitants. It didn't feel like Konoha. It did not feel like anything he had come across before. Any genius could have figured out that something must have happened. Naruto's blood chilled as he considered the possibility that he had been captured by the enemy. It didn't seem like it, with such freedom and no sign of an assault so far, but he reminded himself that it was not beyond pain to play mind tricks. On that thought, he brought his hands together in a seal and murmured, Kai! Naruto had an abnormally large chakra capacity thanks to his demon tenant. The number of times that he used up all his chakra had grudgingly risen since the war had reared its ugly head, but it still was not commonplace for him to feel drained. It was this habitual confidence that caused his heart to pound that much faster. His eyes widened in disbelief. His chakra had barely responded. His reserves felt depleted and suppressed. His second attempt met no avail. Nor did the third. It made him uneasy to be without chakra. With the shade of the tree sheltering him from the streaks of sunlight that peeked through the awning of leaves, hardly anyone seemed to notice him. From his vantage point, Naruto could observe. Adrenaline and unease was quickly clustering his nerves even as he instructed himself to calm down and regulate his breathing. Freaking out was going to help no one. The people looked ordinary enough. Most of them appeared to be on leisurely walks. They acted a little differently to what Naruto was accustomed to. For starters, they didn't seem to know each other. In Konoha, your neighbor was your friend, and your neighbor's aunt on the other side of the village was your mother's best friend. Everyone in the village knew each other. It was the road that caught Naruto's attention. Kami the road. There were some hulking things stationary by the side of the road. Most of them were easily larger than Akamaru had been, equipped with what looked like wheels and panes of glass that took Naruto several seconds to realize were windows. Another, of generally the same structure but a different color and shape, rolled down the road. If Naruto hadn't caught a glimpse of a person sitting inside, he would have thought the thing was moving by itself. Yet another of the strange machines passed by, this one different again. Followed by another. And another. He watched them travel by, mouth hanging slightly open. He didn't look away until a shrill bark tore through his stupor, making him wince. It had come from one of the weird contraptions. The road was choked with them. Yeah, he was pretty sure by now that he had taken a wrong turn. Naruto found himself on the footpath, though he couldn't remember when he had stepped off the patch of grass he had woken on. Exposing himself instantly roused attention. Heads turned to stare, several faces bearing disapproving frowns. It was almost like his childhood again. With the tailed demon sealed within him, Naruto hadn't been the most popular child in the village. A swell of familiarity blossomed in his chest. Naruto never thought he would see the day when he would be elated at being despised. If they knew him as a demon container, he couldn't be far from Konoha, right? Then an elderly man walked up to him. No performance, Ah, no matter. Here, boy. Before Naruto could understand what he was doing, the man tipped a couple of coins in his hand. The blonde blinked in confusion, simply staring at the coins. Hey, Gramps, wait a minute, he called after the old man. He had to jog a little to catch up with him. What are these for? They're not mine. The copper pieces clinked together as he held them out for the man to take back. His words seemed to surprise the man. Well, aren't you a strange one? He chuckled. I've never seen a drifter refusing money before. A drifter? That was what Jiraiya called the homeless people huddled on the streets. I'm not a beggar, Naruto said. If he wasn't in such a situation, he would have laughed. What had given the guy the impression that he was a beggar? No? The man shook his head. Come on, lad, there's no need to be modest. There's a charity store someplace around here, I think. They'll fix you up with some new clothes if you go there. Clothes? Naruto looked down at his attire. I don't need dash. His voice broke off as his mind struggled to make sense of the rags hanging from his body. His trousers had been torn away from below the knee, and when he raised his arm he saw that his shirt was barely holding together. It was like he had come out the short end of a horrific fight. No wonder they were staring. Well, shit. The old man had already left. Naruto approached a man in a dark suit walking his way. Hey, do you know where Kono? He didn't even get to finish his question. The man shook his head dismissively and walked past with barely a glance. Like others Naruto had seen, he was holding a radio thing to his ear. Frowning, Naruto tried to stop another person. He tried 3. The first was a kid, maybe a couple of years younger than him, who was no help at all. The second ignored him. The third cocked an eyebrow and asked him if he was off his rocker. In any other situation, Naruto wouldn't have minded the lack of response. He was used to people being rude and ignorant, especially toward him. But he felt like he was being driven to a corner with his survival rate dropping with each failure. It was making him edgy. This couldn't possibly be the Leaf Village. He had no idea where he was and no recollection of how he had gotten there in the first place. And he was starting to draw attention. A loosely assembled crowd began to gather around him. They obviously didn't come across people like him very often. They were stopping, their gazes lingering. Some were muttering, but when Naruto spun around they met him with uniform stares. It was driving him mad. Pain, you bastard! Naruto hissed under his breath. No one else but Orochimaru would try something like this, and the slimy freak was dead. Genjutsu, it had to be. His chakra had been sealed so he would be unable to unravel it. It was the only logical explanation. Then he remembered. Scraps of reminiscence pieced together, and Naruto's eyes widened. Pain. Akatsuki. It was starting to come back to him. Jiraiya had been leading a special operations squad to infiltrate Amegakure, a squad he had been part of. Naruto's memories tapered and faded from there, but he could fill in the blanks. He remembered clashing with Pain. He didn't need to know the rest to conclude that the mission had gone badly. Questions arose faster than he was ready to face them. Had he won or lost? What about Jiraiya and the others? And more importantly, what the hell had happened? He reeled back, breaking through the ring of spectators. They stared after him. Someone grabbed his arm to steady him. It was the man with the dog from earlier. Hey, you okay? You look dash. Naruto lunged at him, seizing his shoulders. Where is this place? He asked hoarsely. See Central Park. The response was useless to him. It was taking all his control not to shake the man to Kingdom Come. He needed a solid answer, damn it. Which country? This isn't Fire Country, is it? He could hear the desperation in his own voice, the desire to know something. Which village is this? The man's brow creased. What are you on about? Are you sure? Naruto didn't hear any more. 2 years of warfare had hardened him, but with his orientation thrown off to such a degree, the odds seemed to be against him. Pain must have done something to him. The question was what? He had too many questions and no answers. He was tempted to smash his fist into the nearest person's face to see their reaction. If they were Akatsuki, they would retaliate, and his doubts would instantly be cleared. Except they looked so human. There was a mother with a child in a pram not 10 feet away from him. If only it was a genjutsu or henge that took form in the shape of his friends, he would have been able to see through that in an instant. There were so many if-onlys. If only he knew what was going on. Thinking from another view, if they were Akatsuki under the guise of innocence, it was wiser to let them believe that he was fooled. His chakra was unresponsive, and against opponents that significantly outnumbered him, taijutsu was not the way to go. He would do himself more harm than good. So Naruto did the only rational thing that he could see of the situation. He ran. He had no idea where he was going, but the park looked pretty extensive. There had to be a place for him to escape from the prying eyes. Shouts followed him, and he thought he heard some footfalls, but he was still faster than them. His legs felt heavy, and he almost lumbered straight into another person, but even with the handicap he was much faster than them. Naruto didn't even have to look back. They were so sluggish it was almost wrong. Were they even trying? Even Ayame from Ichiraku's would be able to outrun them. Hell, even her father would have fared better. Sprinting through hedges of neatly cropped lawns and keeping well away from contact with the other humans, Naruto discovered that his earlier speculation of the park's range had been rather erroneous. He had already reached the other end and quickly backtracked as he came to the road. No way was he going near those wheeled beasts. They looked even more intimidating in close proximity. There was no one following him. He had either left them behind or they had given up. Either way, his initiative hadn't changed. If he was right and Akatsuki was behind this, there was no doubt that they would catch him flat-footed in his current state. There was a small structure tucked away to the side. Naruto had missed it at first, but now he set off at a jog toward it. The sight of it was enough to placate him, if only a little. He liked being the center of attention, but not that much. There were 2 entrances. Choosing the one closest to him, Naruto slipped inside with all too much gratefulness. He stopped. You are kidding me. He deadpanned. Of all the possibilities, Uzumaki Naruto had stumbled across a toilet. He traced his steps back and poked his head outside. Seeing a plastic plate bearing the distinct male insignia, he dubiously went back inside. Better than nothing. There were 2 cubicles. One of them was closed, and judging from the rustling of toilet paper, it was occupied. Naruto locked himself in the remaining one. He sat on the closed lid of the toilet, cradling his head in his hands. It was tactical to put together what he had. Putting aside his assumption that Pain had schemed this behind his back, it was safe to assume that he was not in Konoha, or anywhere near Fire Country, at that. He hadn't seen a single forehead protector so far, and the chakra presences he could sense were so vague that he wouldn't even have noticed them if he was paying any less attention. The average leaf civilian had twice as much chakra reserves as these people. The sound of water flushing diverted Naruto's thought direction to Pain. His mind was clearer now, and he started to question what the leader of Akatsuki could have gained by thrusting him into such a situation. Their only association was through the Kyuubi. Akatsuki's first priority would be to seal the demon, more so since it was the only tailed beast they had not yet captured. There was no point putting him through this, whatever it was. Reluctantly, Naruto's certainty in his expected foes wavered. He always felt better when he had someone to blame. So if it's not Pain. Naruto's head jerked up as a heavy fist pounded on the door. His hand immediately reached for a kunai, only to find that his weapons pouch was missing. He hadn't noticed the absence until now. It did not come along as particularly surprising if he accounted the state of his clothes. Without weapons and chakra, Naruto felt bare and naked. Quite literally. You gonna get out of there any time soon? A gruff voice demanded. What? He lowered himself into a slight crouch, prepared to barrel into the door and knock down whoever was on the other side. Don't what me, I want to use the damn toilet! Naruto blinked at this. He had been cogitating so deeply on the foreign environment beyond his refuge that it had slipped his mind that the refuge was in fact the damn toilet. Like hell, I'm getting out of here. Use the other one! There's no toilet paper! Naruto reached for the dispenser to shoo off the troublesome guy, and then thought better of it. Frustration had left him in a somewhat foul mood and he had yet to hear a sincere please. Use the urinal then! He snapped. The man obviously didn't want to do that. Naruto responded with his own arsenal of profanities. It felt good to blow off some steam. He was almost sorry when the man grunted one last insult and shuffled out. If he hadn't been so boorish, Naruto might have cooperated. As long as he refused to vacate the cubicle, everyone had to use the urinal. From what Naruto remembered, there was only one. A few other men came seeking the first objective but were less outspoken about it. Some didn't even bother asking at all. Naruto snickered half-heartedly. It was the sort of thing he would do on purpose in his academy days. Iruka had chased him off his extravagant ideals so many times that the blonde was sure the man could predict where his next masterpiece would turn up. Iruka-sensei. A fond memory of eating at Ichiraku's with his former academy teacher tugged the corners of Naruto's mouth into a nostalgic smile. His eyes glistened as he reminded himself that Iruka would never lecture him, never take him out for ramen again. If only he'd known that he would be carving his precious person's name onto the cenotaph, Naruto would have treated Iruka to 10 bowls of ramen, or better, would have returned to the village in time to save him, and the others that had lost their lives during that particular raid. There was no sense of time inside the cubicle. Naruto was not one to sit down and think. He was still far from that habit. However, with nothing better to do, he eventually found himself sinking into a meditative state. He had no inkling of where he was, how he had gotten there, and absolutely no idea what to do next. He attempted to analyze the situation and think ahead. As usual, his mind wandered, and Naruto reminisced. No one could say that he had lived a sheltered life. A shinobi's life was already cluttered with risks and pitifully low survival rates, and coupled with an uncooperative demon. Naruto had to congratulate himself for even being alive. The war had changed his view on matters. Life became rough for everyone, not just him. He had seen friends and strangers alike return broken or in body bags. The unlucky ones didn't even have anything left of them to bring back. Naruto was surprised he was even sane. Illegible graffiti was scrawled on the door. Did the people who had written them ever return to the very same cubicle to read them again? They probably didn't. Naruto himself had dabbled with graffiti before. He wrote things on the spur of the moment, just to get it out of his system. But the thing was, he had left the village countless times with the knowledge that he was heading straight into battle. He had been in the same state of mind as his comrades, and yet on more than one occasion, he had been one of the few to return. He had gone on so many perilous infiltrations, and for some miraculous reason, he had survived each and every one of them. Kakashi had said that Uzumaki Naruto would grow to be strong, eventually surpassing Konoha's history of great shinobi. Of course. Naruto remembered boasting. I'll have to be strong to be Hokage, right? You'd better believe it. His silver-haired mentor had given him that one-eyed smile and absently flipped another page of his little orange book. Naruto could clearly remember what he had added after that, and I'll protect all of my precious people, you'll see. One day you'll be taking me to Ichiraku's for saving your life, Kakashi-sensei. Right. How much of that had he actually fulfilled? He wasn't the Hokage, he hadn't been able to protect all of his precious people, and he realized now that he had never once shared a private meal with Kakashi Hatake at Ichiraku's. It was strange, Naruto thought sullenly to himself. Kakashi had been a commendably experienced and skillful jounin. He had been an Anbu captain previously, and even Kage carefully reconsidered their moves after hearing of his involvement. Kakashi had survived more missions than Naruto and Sasuke combined, and at the time of his death he had been a superior ninja to his knucklehead student. Although he had undeniably grown and matured in more ways than one, Naruto could not help but wonder how it was humanly possible that he was still alive and considerably well. A good ninja survived, of course, but he had taken his time climbing his way up to become a good ninja. Even when he had been stumbling around, green with inexperience, he had survived. He had survived when his betters had been picked off. He was hardier than he was. The Kyuubi was a formidable force that, for all his guts, Naruto would think 10 times over before challenging. It did not automatically disqualify him from the game of death, though. He had teetered on the brink of death more times than he found comfortable. Maybe he just had better luck. So, luck must have landed him in this situation. Naruto felt about ready to leave his little cubicle. He'd had time to think, however sidetracked he had ended up, and after isolating the different factors to the circumstances he had come to the conclusion that he had nothing to lose. From what he could see, Akatsuki probably did not have much to do with it, and even if they had planned this, they had left him with a major advantage: he was alive. He needed to find his way back to Konoha, and he couldn't do that very well locked up in a toilet block. He wisely decided to relieve himself before stepping out of the cubicle. His legs were a little cramped, so he did some quick stretches to loosen up the knotted muscles. He must have been in there longer than he had thought. At least it wasn't bad milk this time. Looking into the wall mirror, Naruto could see how haggard he looked. His face looked grimy, but the flakes that crumbled away when his finger touched the spots told him that it was dried blood, caked to his skin. His clothes bore similar stains. The blood had seeped into the material and taken on a dirty shade. The untrained eye wouldn't have discerned it as the life-giving liquid. I guess I was in a pretty tight spot then, he reflected. It made him all the more fraught to know the outcome of the mission Jiraiya had led. It had become a practice for Naruto to scrub the blood and sweat from his body each time he returned from a taxing mission. He did not like the residue clinging to him. He turned on the tap and splashed his face, rinsing it until his skin was pink and his cheeks flushed. The people he had come across earlier must have mistaken it for dirt. He doubted they were the sort of people who had witnessed enough blood to become impartial to it. They looked too soft. There was nothing he could do about his clothes. Naruto made slight adjustment to the garments. He tore off the flapping sleeves of his shirt and got rid of the loose thread dangling from the legs of the pants. He could barely recognize the scraps of fabric as his own anymore. He had already checked himself for wounds. There were a couple of scrapes along his arms and across his knees, but no sign of any injury that could have spilt as much blood as his clothes indicated. The fox must have dealt with it, though that left Naruto wondering why it had not healed the minor blemishes as well. Lazy furball. The sky was a startling collage of orange when he stepped outside. The light seemed to shine right into his eyes, and Naruto reflexively threw up a hand to shield his face. It must be evening. He remembered it had been around midday when he had woken up. The park was noticeably quieter, though he saw several people walking past across the road. No sign of Akatsuki or anything remotely suspicious. The road itself was unoccupied. In fact, there were none of the metallic machines Naruto had seen earlier passing by. Thinking of the strange things made the blonde teenager's brow furrow. They were like nothing he had seen before. They were definitely some sort of machine. The wheeled structure resembled horse-drawn carts, but Naruto hadn't seen a horse or any animal pulling the vehicles along. The human sitting inside was probably controlling them. He must be in a very advanced country. Maybe Jiraiya knew about them since he traveled so much. He'd ask the old pervert next time. Naruto gingerly stepped off the grass lawn of the park and onto the road, sliding between two of the parked machines. He took a moment to run a hand along the surface of one of them, some sort of metal, no doubt about it. Peering in from one of the windows, he could see seats. They really were like carts, just different. Like this place in Konoha. Konoha, right, I need to get home. He sprinted across, seeing that the road was empty. He half expected to see one of the metal contraptions streaking toward him, but he reached the other side in one piece. Naruto grinned for the first time since his arrival. He could do this. The air was filthy, he noticed. The breaths he inhaled seemed to have a certain weight to them, unlike the crisp air in the Leaf Village. If he concentrated, Naruto could see traces of smog lazily drifting by. With not much space to circulate, it was no wonder. Buildings were tall and abundant. It was impossible to see mountains or any kind of natural scenery beyond the towering structures. It was a concrete jungle. What kind of place was this? Naruto explored the block, cautiously at first, then relaxing his guard a little when reality failed to conjure an enemy wielding weapons of death. People passed by him, occasionally shooting him a curious look, though Naruto suspected that their attention was drawn more toward the state of his clothing than anything else. It was hard to restrain his curiosity. There were more shops and restaurants situated in buildings than the stands set up by the side of the road he had grown up with. It was also daunting how, where Konoha's streets streamed with constant activity, the streets here were split in half by the road that the unknown vehicles traveled by. Hands down, it was the strangest place Naruto had ever been to. He walked around, scrutinizing new things, until he had circled the block twice. Roads intersected at every corner, branching off into the unknown. By now, Naruto was more curious than anything, and he didn't think twice before he decided to cross another road. He wasn't going to waste his time walking around in circles. Curiosity killed the cat. A shrill sound shrieked into his ears, almost identical to the one he had heard previously. Jumped, turned his head in shock. The sun was setting directly behind whatever was roaring toward him. It blinded him. Staggered back, tried to roll out of the way. Tripped. Crap! Something screeched. Smoke billowed out from nowhere, tasting acrid in Naruto's mouth. He coughed and sputtered. From the same nowhere, something hard and solid collided with his head. It was little more than a tap and his forehead protector had absorbed most of the damage, but it was enough to knock him flat on his back. The back of head cracked painfully against the asphalt. Ow, Naruto thought dully. Groaning, he levered himself up on an elbow, the other hand holding his head. He was seeing black spots. He squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head lightly. When he opened them again, there was a pair of polished shoes, not sandals, he noticed hazily, by his side. His misgivings instinctively kicked into gear when a hand dropped on his shoulder. He flinched away, a low growl erupting from his throat. A figure swam into view as he focused his gaze. Naruto shook his head again, ignoring the burst of pain that flashed by as a result. He made out the face of a man. Dark hair, stubble on his chin, calculating eyes. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded. The world had stopped spinning by now, but damn, his head was killing him. "The guy who almost ran you over," an unfamiliar voice said dryly. "You came out of nowhere and you were moving so fast. I wouldn't shake my head like that if I were you, you might have concussion." "I'm fine." Something warm trickled thickly down Naruto's arm. He looked down at it. Blood. He must have scraped a layer of skin off in the fall. "Damn it," he muttered. There was a pause, and then the man spoke again. "I think I should take you to the hospital." "I'm fine. I don't want to go to the hospital." As if being stuck in the middle of nowhere wasn't bad enough. He wasn't going to let anyone take him anywhere. His knee bumped into something when he tried to get to his feet. Naruto stared. He hadn't noticed that he had come so close. "You might want to get out of there." The man saw what he was looking at. Numbly, Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I do." His lower body was pinned under a portion of the metallic vehicle that the man had driven. He could see now that 4 wheels were all that held it up. His limbs would have been crushed if any of them had rolled over him. Sitting up, his eyes were level with a plate on the vehicle bearing numbers and letters. "You fell down at the last moment, didn't you?" the man asked. Naruto nodded. He tripped. If he hadn't, he might have been able to get out of the way in time. "That probably saved your life. I would have hit you if you hadn't gone down." Naruto doubted those words. He didn't think he would be killed that easily. He had been through harder collisions. The man was probably over-exaggerating. He started sliding backward, dragging himself out. He was almost bewildered that his legs were well and functional. "Man, that was close." "Here." He was offered a hand. Naruto accepted the help without second thought, realizing only after he was straightening that he had trusted a stranger too easily. Jiraiya always told him that he was naive. He would have to keep that in mind. Now that he was standing, Naruto saw that the man was not much taller than him. His eyes were calm despite the circumstances. They silently inspect him, appraising the steadiness at which he stood. This was a man who could keep his head on in exigent situations. He noticed the blood on Naruto's arm. "I'll drive you to the hospital." "Not again." "I don't need the hospital," Naruto insisted. "It wasn't much of an injury. But you should watch where you're going, mister. That thing." He jerked his head toward the machine that could have been the death of him. "Could really get someone hurt, you know." The man opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, another voice spoke up. "Do you want me to call an ambulance? He looks like he needs to get to the hospital." Naruto hadn't noticed, but their little commotion had once again caught the attention of the public. There were more people looking and then walking past. The word ambulance did not ring any bells, but hospital did. Why did they persist on admitting him to the hospital? "No, it's all right," he tried to tell them. The woman who had spoken didn't seem to think so. The man standing beside Naruto gave him a long look, and then raised his voice. "There's no need to call an ambulance. I'm a doctor. I'll take care of him." "Nah, I don't need dash. I think I'm qualified to tell the difference between what you need and what you want, kid." There was a certain ring of authority to the man's low voice. It seemed he was the doctor he claimed to be. He tugged Naruto's elbow. "Come on, I'll drive you somewhere I can fix you up." Naruto was tempted to protest. Again. He started to, in fact, but he wasn't stupid. He could see when saying no would not get either of them what they wanted, and he could recognize a guy who always got his way in the end. The man was leading him toward the wheeled machine, rumbling where it stood. He pulled open a side door. Naruto faltered. "Wait a minute," he blurted. "I don't want to get inside that thing." An eyebrow arched. "Why not?" "Why?" He has to ask why. Though he himself had trouble coming up with a legitimate response. "I just don't like it." His excuse was lame, and they both knew it. "Get in the car, kid. Be quick about it, we're holding up traffic." Indeed, there was a train of vehicles waiting behind them. The impatient ones rounded around the site and drove on. But Naruto wasn't interested in that. Car? Is that what they're called? The man looked at him for a moment, his eyes once again pensive. Naruto did not like the way he seemed to see through many things at once, as if he would eventually figure out exactly what was going on. For once, the blonde shinobi was right. You're not from around here, are you? Naruto shrugged. Just his luck to run into a smart guy. If he suspected anyone from Akatsuki here, it would be this man. He was a little like Kakashi. He didn't like the idea of getting inside the car. He had almost been squashed by one. Except the man did not look like he was going to move if he didn't. Naruto considered turning around and running off. He didn't need a doctor to look at him. The Kyuubi was as medically qualified as any doctor. On the other hand, that would make him suspicious. He still did not know what was going on. It probably would not be wise to draw attention to himself. Attention came hand in hand with trouble. Uzumaki Naruto would know. So he ducked his head and climbed into the car. The seat was surprisingly comfortable, and the interior of the machine looked even more bizarre than the exterior. What looked like a leaf, but wasn't quite a leaf, dangled from some sort of mirror attached to the roof. Naruto blinked at it. Curiously, he poked it with a finger. Nope, definitely not a leaf. His nose told him it smelt like aloe vera. It took him several moments to realize that it was an air freshener similar to the one Tsunade had had in her office, just in a flat sort of shape. His inquisitiveness seemed to amuse the man. Naruto heard a chuckle before the door slammed shut. A jolt of adrenaline raced through his veins before he calmed himself. Relax, he told himself. He hadn't been this suspicious of other people when he had been younger. Growing up was not as cool as he had thought it would be, and Jiraiya had said he was growing up too fast. What he meant by that, Naruto didn't have much of an idea. A door opened on the other side and the man lowered himself inside. There was a wheel, much smaller and more compact than the ones that supported the car, positioned in front of him. He grasped it, pulled back a lever that was built between his seat and Naruto's, and they started to move forward. Whoa! Naruto looked out the wide window at the front, then out the one next to him. It was a smooth sort of motion, not much faster than his average speed if he leapt through the trees, but it was something new to him. He was moving without even doing anything. They sped up a little. As they came to a corner, the man turned the wheel in front of him, and the car rounded the corner smoothly. More vehicles drove by in an adjacent lane. Naruto found himself with a grin on his face. Hey, this is pretty cool, he said. He turned back to the man. Can we go any faster? No, I'm at the speed limit already, came the disappointing reply. That's it. It was hard to believe that he had almost been unable to evade something of this speed. He bet he could throw a kunai, and it would travel faster than this. Which reminded him. Aren't you going to apologize for almost making me 2D? He frowned. They had stopped in the middle of the road as other cars cut across them. The man leaned across, reaching over to open a compartment in front of Naruto. He pulled out a paper towel. Hold that against your wound. Naruto had no idea what he was talking about. Until he remembered his arm. The fresh injury did not seem to have healed even the slightest bit. What was the fox doing? You still haven't said sorry yet, he reminded the man. You were the one who jumped out without looking, weren't you? No, I wasn't. Right. Naruto knew sarcasm when he heard it. He was taken aback by the man's response. He had not thought of the matter as his own fault. He had just been walking along, and the next thing he knew he was on the ground. He had been watching so carefully before, maybe he should have looked properly that time. Well, at least stop calling me kid, he grumbled unhappily. I think I've only called you that twice, kid. That's 3 times. But the car was moving again. The man obviously controlled where they went, and Naruto did not think that trying to argue with him at this point would do either of them any good. His concern was unneeded. His companion seemed perfectly alright with multitasking. What's your name? He asked as they turned into another street. There were a lot of roads and streets, Naruto noticed. Me? I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Again, he had to berate himself for giving out his details so easily. Perhaps it was his nature to be open and accepting. It was hard to change who and what he was. It was not fair that their introductions were one-sided, so Naruto asked for the man's name in return. Kazuo Haruno. Kazuo, huh? Sounds cool. Don't get into the habit of calling me that. Naruto turned to look at him. Why not, Kazuo? He asked. He thought he saw a flash of annoyance flicker on Kazuo Haruno's features. The blonde experienced an unexpected taste of triumph. Because, the man answered, I am older than you and therefore your senior. You should address me as Mr. Haruno. Naruto took a moment to think about it. Nah, I like Kazuo better. There was silence for a couple of minutes. Have it your way, kid, the older man said. I told you, quit calling me a kid. You know my name, why don't you use it? He was getting ridiculously worked up about this. Since the war, he had commanded men who were twice his age. He was not used to the sudden change back to teenager status. Well, you know my name. Why don't you use it? I am using it. My preferred name. Who knew the seemingly cool-headed man could be so annoying? In fact, Kazuo seemed to get more and more lighthearted as time wore on, and it had only been 10 minutes since their acquaintance. Naruto made up his mind. Hey, Kazuo, I really don't need you to patch me up. You can let me off around here. I'm not going to do that. What? They had stopped again for the other cars. It's my responsibility to see that you're alright, since I was the one who almost made you 2D. Damn, the guy had good memory. Naruto ran his hands along the door, trying to figure out how to open it. I am alright. Come on, let me off already. But Kazuo just moved the car forward. Hey! Naruto. It was the first time the man had used his name. Wouldn't any doctor want to know why a kid was running around with blood all over his clothes? It was enough to make Naruto stiffen. For a ninja like him, blood-spattered clothes were the norm, so he could not understand why the fact that Kazuo Haruno had been able to discern the dark stains was startling to him. Perhaps it was the obliviousness that he had received from the general public. The blood was so dried up that it was almost unrecognizable. But Kazuo Haruno could tell. Another conclusion came to him almost as soon as the initial alarm dissipated. Naruto was surprised at the rate his mind was churning. He had never fashioned himself as a thinker. Akatsuki would know where and how he had gotten the bloodstains. Kazuo seemed to be genuinely interested. The possibility of Akatsuki's involvement was quickly becoming diluted. Kid! Naruto snapped to attention. Huh? Did you say something, Kazuo? I asked you if you were in a fight. Oh. The strength seemed to drain from him all at once as he reclined into the cushioned seat. Yeah, I guess I was. What sort of fight? Kazuo questioned. Dunno. I can't remember. He wished he could. He was so confused. Kazuo? He received a grunt, so he proceeded to ask. Where are we going? The answer was one-worded and unbelievably significant to Naruto. Home. His eyes widened, hopes lifting. Really? You know where I live? No. Kazuo imperceptibly rolled his eyes. My home. Oh? Naruto said again, sinking back into his seat. Have you got a problem with that, kid? His sense of anxiety was slipping away, revealing the tired teenager that he was. Not really, but why? I'm a doctor. That was all the reasoning Kazuo gave. Apparently, he expected it to be enough. Naruto chose not to press the issue. As long as there was no danger, he was quite alright with a stranger taking him home. If Kazuo proved to be untrustworthy, Naruto was more than capable of taking care of himself even in this state. There seemed to be a radio in the car. It wasn't playing any of the channels Naruto usually had his set on. Classical music was not his cup of tea either, but it was slow and soft, and he gradually let it lull him to sleep. His slumber was uneasy. A frown carved into his brow, and he thought he muttered a little, though he was not certain what slipped past his lips. He was almost grateful when he was shaken awake by Kazuo. It felt like he had only been asleep for seconds. We're here, kid. Out you get. Keep pressure on that arm, weren't you wearing a seatbelt? The instructions came and he obliged with a bleary mind, moving robotically. What? Naruto heard himself mumble. He hadn't realized he was so tired. Chakra deprivation was nastier than he remembered. Thankfully, he did not have to walk much. Kazuo had stopped directly outside a house. Naruto observed it as the fog cleared from his head. It was a modest-looking building with 2 stories and pale bricks. He could already guess that it would be larger than his apartment. It was. As Kazuo let them in, Naruto's eyes swept over the spacious lounge and furnishings. One side was cut off by a counter, reserving space for a kitchen. A dining table stood behind a set of couches, a glass coffee table placed in front of the said couches. Kazuo directed him to the couch. Sit down. Naruto lifted the paper towel from his arm as he took his seat. It hadn't bled a lot. Kazuo did not seem to care. He took out a white box from a cupboard and slid it onto the coffee table, a first aid kit. Naruto could not help but pull a face at the gloves that he pulled on. It's just a scratch, he told him. Don't tell a doctor what to do, kid. Kazuo got down to work. After a while, Naruto tried to make conversation, finding the silence awkward. Do you always pick up people off the side of the road and take them home? He asked the man. Well, look at it this way, Kazuo replied, dabbing at the wound with a towel that he had gotten up to wet earlier. Do you always cross the road without looking? Naruto scowled. Hey, you don't need to rub it in, you know. What, this ointment? It's antibiotic. It's good for you. Not that. What then? Naruto sighed in exasperation. You're really frustrating, he shot at Kazuo after a pause. The man gave a small smile. That's good news for me. Why you dash? He stopped when he heard a scuffling sound from upstairs. Dad? Who are you talking to? A feminine voice called down. Naruto looked at Kazuo. Who's that? My husband. Your what? He received a pointed look in return. What do you call your father, kid? Naruto lowered his eyes. Nothing, he murmured. He could feel Kazuo's eyes on him. The man never seemed to miss anything. He was grateful when no questions arrived to pry at his parentage. Dad? The voice asked again, having heard no reply. Come down and meet someone, Sakura, Kazuo called up, tilting his head back. I picked up some takeout for dinner too. Mao, you said you were going to cook tonight. The voice didn't sound too upset, and it sounded much closer now. Kazuo applied tape to hold the layer of bandages together. He had worked so quickly and efficiently that Naruto had barely noticed the process. Kazuo was a little like Shizune in that matter. He talked and bantered to distract his patients. So who's this someone you brought home, Dad? Naruto turned his head. A slim girl was standing at the bottom of the stairs, one hand on the rail. She appeared to be around his age. Her pink hair interested him, but his attention was drawn to the shorts that she wore. Or rather, the skin it revealed. He couldn't help it, they were the first things he saw. He did have his shame, though, and turned away quickly, face reddening. He had been spending too much time around Jiraiya, no doubt about it. Except he wasn't a. Dad! He's a pervert! Busted. He groaned. Cringing, he raised his head and tried to explain. Tried to. Not many words came out when he saw the amount of indignant fury blazing in the emerald eyes that glared at him. He recoiled. Hi. Naruto grinned weakly. Kazuo's daughter frowned down at him. Who is he? The question was directed at her father, thick with accusation. The message, you'd better have a good reason for putting your daughter's dignity at risk. A kid I almost ran over, Kazuo said. He packed away the first aid kit. I thought I'd take him home and fix him up. I thought you were a better driver than that. Sakura had not looked away. It took most of Naruto's willpower to hold up her gaze. It was ridiculous. He was more afraid of a girl with pink hair than a missing nin. Like her father, Haruno Sakura did not seem to have much trouble dealing with random strangers. Or holding a grudge against them. It was Kazuo who rescued him. Sakura, I left dinner in the car. Would you mind getting it for me? It's in the back seat. Sakura caught the keys he tossed her with unnerving fluidity, especially since she was still occupied giving Naruto a dirty look that unquestionably discouraged him from laying eyes on anywhere inappropriate. The blonde sat rigidly until the girl had disappeared out the front door. Freaky, he whispered shakily, as if afraid she could still hear him. Some advice, kid? Don't peek at my daughter. It's for your own safety, Kazuo suggested. He did not seem bothered by the conflict that had instantly sparked between the two teenagers. You're telling me this now. Like Sakura, Naruto was keen to place the blame on the adult. Kazuo's tone changed, becoming businesslike. I think you're about ready to go home now. Do you have family I can call to pick you up? Unsure how to reply, Naruto just shook his head. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. Where were you staying? Nowhere. Naruto saw an opportunity. Where are we anyway? How far are we from Fire Country? Kazuo regarded him. Fire Country? He repeated. Yeah. You must know Fire Country. It's one of the 5 great nations. Naruto's voice got quieter until it trailed off completely. He knew that look in Kazuo's eyes. He had seen it at the park. It was the look of someone who had no idea what he was talking about. Kid? Yeah? I think you're lost. The door opened again and Sakura stepped inside, peering inside a plastic bag. What did you get, Dad? It looks like noodles to me, she said. Naruto knew the answer the moment she opened the lid of one of the containers. The heavenly scent escaped into the air, lingering. It was torturous. It was ramen, Kazuo answered. Naruto's stomach growled. Sakura stared. What was that? He swallowed meekly. Me. Ramen. You're hungry, aren't you, kid? I guess I did buy extra for breakfast tomorrow. He couldn't even remember the last time he had eaten. It was time to practice his puppy dog eyes. Sakura caught on quickly. Is he staying for dinner as well? She obviously disapproved. What can I say, Sakura? Your father is a charitable man. His presence made the meal a little uncomfortable, but Naruto was too immersed in his food to care or do much about it. His loyalty toward Ichiraku's had not dithered one bit. The beef ramen Kazuo had handed him was not quite well done as Ichiraku's, the broth a notch below Naruto's usual standard. He dug in anyway. He was ravenous. At one point, he swallowed too quickly and choked. A hand thumped his back, unexpectedly hard. Slow down, Sakura scolded. He coughed, raising a hand. I am okay. I'm okay. Then Kazuo seemed to remember something. That's right, you don't know each other yet, do you? He didn't want for the negatives. Kid, this is my daughter Sakura. Sakura, this is Uzumaki Naruto, our new roommate tonight. Huh, you remembered my wait, what? He was not alone in the last exclamation. Sakura was staring at her father in dismay, mouth dropping open. Kazuo continued eating unperturbed. You have nowhere to go, right, kid? You can take the couch tonight. We'll figure something out tomorrow. As much as Naruto was thankful for offer, he was also impressed by Kazuo's swift decision-making. Even he wasn't certain he wanted to stay in a stranger's house for a night. Kazuo, are you sure dash? Dad, do you know what you're dash? Both Naruto and Sakura stopped to look at each other. You first, Naruto offered. Sakura nodded, the only approval she had given him so far. Dad, we hardly know him, she objected. Naruto was not wounded by her words, it was true, after all. He was a fairly easygoing person, but even he would think twice before inviting an outsider to stay at his place. I don't know half the people I saved the lives of, Sakura. The kid is lost. What do you expect me to do? If you really want, we can just kick him out and leave him there in the cold. Naruto was fully prepared for Sakura's affirmation of her father's suggestion, so he almost fell off his chair when she scowled at her father. You play dirty, she accused. Kazuo had finished his noodles by now, and he faced the teenagers with an even expression on his face. Besides, I let Ken stay over, didn't I? His reminder made Sakura flush. Dad! She hissed, throwing a side glance at Naruto. The latter was confused by her reaction. He didn't have much time to think about it, though. What about you, Naruto? Kazuo asked him. Do you want to stay over for the night? The couch should be big enough for you. He was glad that Sakura was too busy controlling her blush. Her heavy gaze would probably make him choke on his own saliva. Well, I don't really mind. He shrugged, choosing his words carefully. But you know, like she said, I don't really know you guys. Sakura seemed a little taken aback by his response. Naruto realized that he had undoubtedly given her a very bad first impression that was far removed from his actual characteristics. She probably thought he was a good-for-nothing, greedy, perverted jerk. Kazuo picked up their bowls and deposited them in the sink. It doesn't really matter, does it? You're welcome to sleep outside if it'll make you feel better. No, I'm fine, Naruto said quickly. Kids these days are so modest. Kazuo sighed. His daughter gave a disbelieving snort. Right, I'm going to take a shower. You can take one too, kid. Actually, he said, reviewing his guest's disheveled appearance. You have to take one if you're going to be sleeping on our couch. We'll fix you up with some clothes as well. Oh, and make sure you don't get your arm wet. What did you do anyway? Fall off a cliff? Sakura asked after her father had gone upstairs. You really need some new clothes. Naruto grimaced. The cloth was scratchy and worn thin with dozens of torn patches. Can't remember what I did, but these really suck. I got mistaken for a beggar earlier, he said, remembering the old man. Not really a surprise. Sakura hesitated. Hey, Naruto? Huh? What? You're not a thief or anything like that, are you? He frowned. Fair enough that she should think so, but he was still a little offended. He was the guy who beat up the bad guys, not the other way around. I won't steal anything. Promise, he assured her. I always keep my promises. That wasn't exactly true. He tried to keep his promises. Too many of them had been broken lately. Sakura seemed to believe him. Still, he could hear the unspoken words, you'd better. You wouldn't mind if I sat outside for a bit, would you? Naruto asked. You don't have to ask, you know, Sakura retorted. She went to the sink and started washing their utensils. This made Naruto feel a tad bit ungrateful, and he changed his mind. Let me do that. He took the sponge from her hand. She seemed uncertain but eventually let him have his way. Just leave them on the rack to dry, she murmured. I'll find you some blankets. Thanks, he called after her. He thought he heard her muttering to herself as she followed her father upstairs, and he chuckled. Girls, he would never understand them. It only took him a few minutes to complete his task. Naruto left everything on the rack as he had been told. Then, finding the front door, he stepped outside. He was met with a breeze of cool air. The sun had set while he had been with the Harunos. Stars decorated the inky sky. The house lacked a porch, so Naruto fashioned himself a seat from a brick ledge that surrounded a small patch of plants. He could see lights from tall buildings in the distance. He had seen quite a few buildings that were taller than the Hokage Tower. Several cars passed by, installed lights shining. He was lucky to have run into Kazuo, he reflected. He actually had not even considered accommodation until now. He had been hellbent on finding his way back to Konoha, completely overlooking the necessary details. That had been very, well, stupid of him, he supposed. Naruto was often told that he had to think before he acted. The Harunos were a weird family. Or perhaps their oddity was normal. Naruto wouldn't know. He did wonder about Sakura's mother. He hadn't met her, and she had not been mentioned so far. Perhaps Kazuo had gone through a divorce with his wife. Though Naruto did notice that there was not much maternal touch to the house. Sakura's mother had probably passed away. He wasn't going to ask about it. He was hardly in a position to poke his nose into their family's business. He would probably leave the next day anyway. Naruto sighed. He was going to have to think again. Having asked himself the same question over and over again, it was laughable that he still did not have an answer. What was he going to do? Raising his hand and curling it into a loose fist, he could tell that his chakra had not returned. It was starting to worry him. Usually he would have recovered at least a small fraction by this time. Coupled with his unhealed wounds, Naruto had to wonder if the Kyuubi had taken a sick leave or something. Naruto's head came up very quickly. Was that it? Had Kyuubi been sealed by Akatsuki while he had been unconscious? But that made no sense. He shouldn't be alive if that was the case. Gaara had been killed when the Shikaku had been extracted. Well, he couldn't do anything about it if Kyuubi had been sealed. That only made returning to Konoha all the more prioritized. Pain would definitely start mobilizing Akatsuki toward their world peace campaign if they had all the tailed beasts. Even if he was wrong and Kyuubi was just being moody, Naruto still needed to find his way back. It was easier said than done, though. He had to be unspeakably far from Konoha. There was no telling how long it would take him, and he had no idea which way to go. Not to mention that he was awfully vulnerable without chakra. He had hoped his reserves would replenish overnight, but at this rate the likelihood was slim. Would Kazuo let him stay until his chakra returned? He had been hospitable so far, but that man was a strange guy. Haruno Sakura was also misleading. Naruto's impressions of her swung back and forth like a pendulum. One second she was downright scary and the next she was strangely empathetic. Granny Tsunade had been like that, too. Naruto closed his eyes mournfully. That had been another promise he hadn't been able to keep. He should not have vowed to protect so many people if it was beyond him. He felt like a liar. A big fat liar. He sat outside for a while, allowing time to flow. He would most likely find himself back here later. It was a little discomforting to be in the presence of a host he hardly knew. He hoped Sakura and her father did not have a habit of watching television late at night. He had seen a larger-than-normal television in the lounge. Like the radio in Kazuo's car, he doubted they broadcasted the same channels as his crappy, second-hand one back home. Unfortunately, when he decided that it was time to go back inside, he was faced with a certain difficulty. Naruto wrenched at the knob, twisting and turning. He was afraid of tugging too hard and breaking it, and no one responded when he knocked. He had locked himself out. Reluctantly, he realized that he would have to try a window. After a quick round he discovered that the ones of the ground level were locked. Great. Naruto smacked his forehead. He was definitely an idiot, all right. It was difficult to be certain from the ground, but it seemed the majority of windows on the second floor were closed as well, except one. It was around the side of the house. It seemed to belong to a room. He couldn't tell what was in it. It would have to be that one. Normally, Naruto would have simply glued himself to the brick surface with chakra and walked up, but since he did not have that luxury, he backed up to the fence that cordoned the house from its neighbors. His sandals were falling apart but could still serve their purpose. He did not fancy scaling the rough shell on bare feet. Naruto took a running start and leapt upward. His fingers missed the ledge by millimeters. Falling back, he twisted so that he could use the top of the fence as leverage, and propelled himself up again. His limbs must have been weaker than he thought. He once again miscalculated his range, though this time he managed to grab onto the ledge. The air was knocked out of him as he slammed into the wall. Grunting, he reached up to open the window a little further, and then hoisted himself into the room. His sandals landed on the floor much sooner than he had expected, however, and Naruto, his balance overthrown, almost fell backward out the way he had come. He steadied himself before he did, exhaling deeply. "What the hell, Naruto?" Naruto's head snapped around so quickly that he heard a faintly audible crack. "Ga! Oh, whoa!" No amount of reflexes could rescue him this time, and he tumbled off the desk he had mistaken for the floor, landing in a crumpled heap on the real thing. Sakura rolled off her bed and stalked over to him. She leaned over, hands on her hips. "What the hell, Naruto?" she said again, her voice demanding. He just groaned. First the toilet, now Sakura's room. "Did you just climb in through my window?" Yeah? Sorry, turns out the front door was locked," Naruto said sheepishly. He clambered to his feet, almost overbalancing. He felt strangely clumsy when he was around Sakura. She was staring out her window, trying to understand something. Sakura, you might fall if you lean out that far." "You just, from the ground? What are you, a gorilla?" She was dumbfounded, her eyes wide. Naruto blinked as the picture of a furry replica of himself peeling a banana involuntarily offered itself to his imagination. "No, not a gorilla." He jabbed a thumb at his chest. "Me, I'm a ninja." Several seconds trickled by. Then Sakura moaned in despair. "Oh no, we have another one." She shook her head, seeming to curse her father under her breath. She grimaced at Naruto. "All right, which one are you? Leonardo? Raphael?" He had long since learned that trying to understand something he couldn't would only get him in more trouble, so Naruto settled for the traditional. "Huh! That's right, Naruto, you're not a turtle." "What, so first I'm a gorilla and now I'm a turtle?" Maybe he hadn't established the point. "I'm a ninja." Naruto pointed at his forehead protector. "See? I'm a leaf nin." Confusion sparked in Sakura's eyes as she looked at the headband. Then she sighed. "Naruto." Her tone was suddenly patient and somewhat sympathetic, as if she was talking to a child. "You are not a ninja. There are no ninjas." "Hey, look, I'm a dash." "Ninjas don't exist." Naruto gawked at her, trying to decipher the now irritated expression Sakura wore. That had been a very bad joke. "What do you mean?" He was getting annoyed now. "Of course we exist. We're in the middle of a war right now. You can't make fun of that." His level of seriousness startled Sakura. "Naruto?" she asked uncertainly. He caught himself before he could raise his voice any further. He muttered an apology, glaring at the ground. Slowly, his brow smoothed as the adrenaline fizzled out of his system. It wasn't a laughing matter. He was 200%, 1000% if it had to be, confident that ninjas existed. He was one himself, damn it. "But look at all those differences between this place and Konoha," his cynical self pointed out. And there were many differences. One more would not have affected the number, but that one more was all the difference to Naruto. Of all the things that this place could lack, how could Sakura not even have heard of shinobi? Had they not been affected by the war at all? "Sakura?" His chest was heaving with heavy breaths. "You're serious, aren't you? About there being no ninjas?" She pursed her lips, then gave it to him. "Of course I am." Naruto closed his eyes. "It's nothing big, maybe they don't need ninjas in this place. That's why Sakura doesn't know about them. It's okay. It's okay." But he couldn't say the same for Konoha, even Fire Country. No one seemed to know them. Sakura shuffled her feet. "Naruto, was being a ninja some sort of childhood dream of yours? Like being a policeman or something like that?" she asked tentatively. He took a deep breath, making himself open his eyes and smile at her. "Sort of. You seem really upset about it. Just overreacting again. I do lots of stupid things, heh? Sorry about that, Sakura." Silence stretched between them. Naruto searched for something to say. After all, this was his fault, and it was good manners to resolve what he had begun. Except there was nothing he could say. Nothing he could figure out, nothing he could make any sense of. Then Sakura started giggling. Naruto tilted his head. "What's so funny?" "And nothing." Despite the growing bleakness of his situation, Naruto could not resist grinning. "Aw, come on, tell me!" Sakura controlled her giggles, her shoulders still shaking with laughter. Mirth swam in her eyes. It was the first time Naruto had seen her smile, and it struck him now that she was quite pretty. I was just trying to imagine a ninja like you, she began. Wearing pink pajamas. His imagination once again supplied a creative image. Naruto snorted. That would be pretty funny. And weird, he conceded. You want to try it out? He suggested jokingly. Now she stopped laughing. It was so abrupt that Naruto looked questioningly at her. She wasn't quite meeting his gaze. Well, you're going to have to, she said apologetically. Why? You see, Dad doesn't wear pajamas. He goes to bed naked? In his boxers, Sakura corrected. And a singlet. Naruto tried to rid himself of the disturbing image. Okay, I can deal with that. What's that got to do with me in pink pajamas? Not exactly pink, she mumbled. Sakura. Okay. She looked flustered. Dad probably has some clothes that are close to your size, but he doesn't like the idea of you going to bed in jeans and a t-shirt, so. It took roughly 10 seconds for Naruto to comprehend the meaning behind the unsaid words. His eyes bulged out in horror. No way. No way. He flinched. I can just stay in these clothes. No, you can't. They're filthy. We're throwing them out after your shower. Naruto was frantically waving his hands in front of him. I don't want to wear your pink pajamas. They're not pink, they're purple. He paused, considering. Purple isn't too bad. With love hearts on them, Sakura added. Naruto blanched. You! It was obviously equally uncomfortable for Sakura. Hey, it's not like I want that in my pants either, she shouted back, blushing profusely. Oh God! Naruto paled and turned around, pulling away the waistband of his ruined trousers. Phew, that's good. Lucky. What are you doing? Sakura asked suspiciously, trying to look around him. God, don't look. What? I was checking if I still had any underpants on. A fist blindsided him, sending him staggering out into the hallway. Don't do that in front of a lady! The door slammed shut with frightening force, shuddering in its place. Naruto gingerly picked himself up, only to have Sakura open the door again and toss the revolting pajamas in his face. So violent, he grumbled, holding the clothes at arm's length, pinched between two fingers. I heard that! Sakura growled dangerously behind the closed door. As he stomped down the landing, Kazuo's voice floated from one of the rooms. Sakura's mad. You're in trouble, kid! Naruto realized, as he finally located the bathroom, that his life was so screwed up it was not funny. Chapter 2, Tomorrow. His arm was stuck and snared in a tangle of torn muscles and tissue. Blood poured from the deep gouge and from the faceless man's gaping mouth. The flesh his Rasengan had shredded threaded itself into bleeding tentacle-like tendrils, snatching at his limb. With a meaty sucking sound, his arm sunk. Oof! Naruto half rose from his makeshift bed, beads of sweat perspiring on his forehead. He groaned aloud and rubbed his stomach where something heavy had dropped on him, roughly jerking him out of his nightmare. Cracking an eye open, he saw that the object of offense was a satchel bag. His head flopped back down. He felt like he had fought 100 rounds with the Konohamaru Corps, and lost. Who dropped a pink makeup bag on me? He moaned. Huh! A blurry face peeked over the back of the couch. Long strands of hair tickled his face, venturing closer to his nose than was comfortable. Oh, it's you. Sorry, I forgot you were sleeping on the couch. The weight lifted off him. And it's my school bag, not a makeup bag. What's the difference? He grumbled. He rolled over, trying to fall back asleep. Unfortunately, he rolled the wrong way, and toppled maladroitly off his perch. His nose bumped into the edge of the coffee table. Ow, why can't I ever get a peaceful wake-up call? He complained, more to himself than anything. Whatever happened to beautiful ladies? Even getting up proved to have its difficulties. He had unconsciously woven himself into a snarl of blankets in his restless sleep. Naruto struggled to free himself from the mess, knocking his limbs against the couch more times than he could count in the process. When he had finally untangled himself, he tossed the blanket on the couch and straightened, rubbing his eyes blearily. Then he looked around him. Sparse lounge, white walls, tasteful decor. Whoa, heaven looks classy. Are you always this silly in the morning? Haruno Sakura wanted to know. Naruto blinked at her. He knew who she was, but it felt out of place somehow. He'd never seen her in the village before. Then it came back to him in a rush of confusion and disarray. He wasn't home, far from it. He was staying at a hospitable stranger's home, that was all. Naruto watched Sakura bustle around in the kitchen, an air of haste shrouding her. She had said that ninjas did not exist. How could he have forgotten that? How could he have forgotten any of this? To this point, he still had no inkling of what had happened to him, or what was going to happen to him either. He was keen to testify though, so, in a wary tone, he said, "Morning, Sakura." She nodded and cast him a quick glance. "Yeah, good mo. Oh, wow." She stared in wonder and disbelief. Naruto sighed. Her expression was so human it had to be real. A snort of extreme amusement escaped from Sakura. Naruto looked up to see her covering her mouth with both her hands, trying desperately not to laugh, from the looks of it. "What's so funny?" he asked her, a strong wave of déjà vu tingling his senses. He remembered asking the same question recently. It was a battle between Sakura and the Giggles. The Giggles came out victorious. You're... She shook her head, laughing. "You look ridiculous." It was then that Naruto looked down at himself, a growing sense of dread gathering at the pit of his stomach. He remembered doing the same after a comment from an old man in a park. Except he was not met with the sight of torn-up rags. Instead, he saw himself in a pair of 2 small purple pajamas. With love heart prints. And frills. Ah, crap. "See, can I take a picture?" Sakura asked, appraising him with a humorous smile. She seemed to have forgotten how embarrassed she had been last night. That wasn't much of a surprise. She also seemed to have overlooked the fact that he was a stranger her father had taken home just the previous day. "No way!" Naruto's face was a mask of horror. "Hey, those are my pajamas," she reminded him. It looked like she would have had more to say, but then her eyes landed on a wall clock. The humor rapidly drained from her face, quickly replaced with the urgency Naruto had witnessed earlier. "Crap, I'm going to be late." Without another look at him, she hurried up the stairs, taking the steps 2 at a time. "What are you late for?" Naruto called after her, confused. There had to be a limit to how much confusion he could legally take each day. "School. What else do you think? There's breakfast on the table. Go wake my dad for me, would you? There's spread for your toast if you want some." School? Naruto thought. He didn't try to make sense of it. Maybe they had a different education system. He wouldn't be surprised. He was surprised that Sakura had prepared breakfast for him, though. There was a platter of toast on the dining table. It must have been what he had seen Sakura making earlier. Jars containing jam and peanut butter completed the set. It wasn't much, but Naruto felt his heart warm with gratitude toward the pink-haired girl. Maybe she wasn't as aggressive as he thought. No one had made breakfast for him before. He stuffed a slice of toast into his mouth, then proceeded upstairs to wake up Kazuo. There weren't many rooms to look through. The door to Kazuo's room was ajar, but Kazuo himself was nowhere to be seen. Naruto stepped inside. "Kazuo? What?" The voice came from a door at the other end of the room. "Built-in toilet, huh? Neat. Sakura made breakfast," he called to the man. "You eat first, kid. I'm coming." Kazuo's room lacked personality, Naruto mused. It was bland and boring. He saw some photos on a low table, but caught himself before curiosity got the better of him. He wouldn't be a very good guest if he went around poking his nose into everything. Not to mention he usually got into trouble for being nosy. He was about to leave when something else occurred to him. Kazuo?" He heard a grunt. "Do you think you have some clothes you could lend me?" He tugged at the shirt sleeves that scratched at his wrists. It was easily the most humiliating thing he had ever worn, and he had no intention of running around in it. "What's wrong with the pajamas?" Haruno Kazuo asked casually. Discovering that his vocabulary lacked a word that could suitably describe his discomfiture, Naruto just made a strangled sound that he made sure the man heard. Kazuo poked his head out of the adjoining bathroom, his dark hair dripping water. Naruto cringed as he was subjected to a considering look. There was no place for him to hide, damn it. "Kid, I'm impressed." "Huh? You look ridiculous. Like father, like daughter." It deserved a sigh. Naruto folded his arms tightly over his chest. The frilly collar prickled his chin. "Thanks for the friendly kick at my self-esteem," he sulked. Kazuo pointed a toothbrush at a wardrobe in the corner. "I've got some old clothes in the bottom drawer." He watched Naruto dig through it for a while, then chuckled and retreated back to the bathroom. Naruto thought he heard something along the lines of, "Sakura will never wear those again." More like I will never wear them again. Naruto found himself scoffing. Pawing through Kazuo's clothes, Naruto started to understand the man's dress code. He uncovered an incredible collection of button-up shirts. Any t-shirts he managed to find were strikingly white. There was not a spot of orange in the arrangement. Displeased, he settled for one of the dark blue button-ups and a loose set of trousers that looked like they hadn't seen daylight since Kazuo's teenage years. Naruto unsuccessfully tried to imagine Kazuo as a teenager and sniggered. He went to the bathroom to get changed, which was on the same floor. He enthusiastically got out of the borrowed pajamas. Kazuo's clothes fit him quite well, but the button-up shirt had long sleeves that irritated him, so Naruto folded them back to his elbows. The mirror showed him a surprisingly well-dressed young man. Although his new clothes were not torn to strips or adorned with sickening love hearts, Naruto could hardly recognize himself. The attire was a tad bit tighter than a shinobi would have preferred but was somewhat satisfactory. It made him feel very clean. While he was washing his hands, he saw the bandage around his right forearm and his brow pulled together. Peeling away the tape, he unraveled the dressing. As he had expected, the wound was still there, if a little paler. Scabs had formed overnight. Naruto grimaced. The fox should have completely healed it by now. Naruto was about as much a worrier as he was a thinker. He liked to take things in stride, hardly planning ahead. But now he was starting to grow concerned. Kyuubi had never been this delayed before. He had tried to communicate with the demon last night in an attempt to figure out what had happened, but all he had gotten was an unwelcome dream of gore. He wrapped up his arm again, roughly and not nearly as neat as Kazuo's work. He stopped when he reached for the tape. Naruto blinked. He could have sworn he had taped it to the edge. He looked high and low for it, but finding such a small and transparent strip was, to someone who couldn't find something that was right in front of his nose, comparable to looking for a grain of rice in a desert. It didn't take him long to give up. It wasn't like he rarely misplaced things either. The door to Sakura's room was open, so he walked right in. "Here's your clothes," Naruto said without looking up from attempting to tie a knot in place of the missing tape. Sakura looked over her shoulder. "You should knock before you waltz right into someone's room, you know. Especially a girl's room," she informed him mildly. Naruto chuckled. "Someone was always telling me the same thing," he said without thinking. "Well, they're right. Must have been a girl, huh?" The blonde's eyes softened. He hadn't intended to say that aloud and unearthed memories of a certain pigtailed Sannin who always chucked something at his head whenever he invited himself into her office. "A girl? Not really." His voice was just a murmur. "More like mood-swinging grandma. Tsunade always got mad at him whenever he called her granny," he remembered. She got mad at him for a lot of things. He wondered if she was mad at him for letting her down. She would definitely punch him through several walls if she knew he was still anguishing. Tsunade had never liked cry babies. Not that Naruto was crying. But he did shake his head and get his mind out of the gutter. Jiraiya had already beaten sense into him. There was no need, no point, to weep all over the floor. What was done, right? He found Sakura gazing at him when he looked up. "Why are you looking at me like that?" he asked, giving her a grinning. Sakura looked embarrassed that she had been caught looking, but she held her gaze. Naruto acknowledged her valor. The civilian girls he had known became introverted when pressed. No fun at all. "You just sounded sad, that's all," she said, looking at him with a hint of curiosity. It felt oddly nice to have someone paying attention to him, especially a girl his age. It was then that Naruto realized something. He was wary about strangers because many villagers in Konoha still did not approve of him, no matter how much they seemed to accept him for his contribution in the war. Kazuo and Sakura didn't seem to know anything about him, and they treated him like they would any other person. If Sakura called him a pervert, it was because he had given her that impression, and not because of any prejudice. He had felt the same swell of warmth when he heard that Sakura had made breakfast for him. It amazed him that he had known the Harunos for less than 24 hours. A hand waved in front of his face. If you're still tired, you can go take the couch again." "Nah. This is nothing. I've lived off 2 hours of sleep before," he dismissed jauntily. Sakura raised an eyebrow as if to say, 2 hours? Boy, are you a freak. Naruto just smiled at her until she shrugged and turned back to whatever she was doing. "Say, what are you doing?" Sakura had squatted down to talk to him, but now Naruto realized that she was standing on a swiveling chair, reaching up for something stacked atop a cupboard. She glanced down at him. "Getting my old biology books. I need them this term," she answered. He just nodded, like he knew what she was talking about. Shizune often talked to him about biology, and how it was important to producing herbs, but he had never paid much attention. "Since you're here, can you hold the chair for me? It keeps moving." Sure." Naruto grasped the back of the chair. It had wheels, he observed. It would have caused a lot of damage if Sakura had slipped. After several minutes of shuffling sounds, he looked up to see how she was doing. "Hey, you alright up?" His voice trailed off as he turned away quickly. Sakura wore a blouse that slid up when she strained upward. He saw a flash of skin. "I am not a pervert. I am not a pervert." "I can't reach," Sakura huffed. Then she saw Naruto's red face. She started to frown, but the confusion quickly morphed into a look of mortification when she seemed to understand what Naruto must have seen. She caught on quickly he'd give her that. She tugged down her shirt, flustered. She stammered, breaking the awkward silence. Naruto groaned inwardly. How was it possible that something like this always happened when he was around Sakura? I'll get your stuff for you. I'm taller, he said distractedly, not meeting her eyes. He doubted she was looking at him anyway. Sakura had to understand that he hadn't intended to look. It made him feel even more self-conscious. She stepped down from the chair. Thanks, it's the only box up there. I see it. Hold the chair for me, will you? Naruto reached up and pulled down a sealed cardboard box. He tucked it under one arm, using his other hand to steady himself as he got down. Sakura accepted it with a murmur of thanks. You're pretty strong, aren't you? She asked him when she was unpacking the box. The question took him aback. I guess. Why'd you ask? It's a heavy box. You took it down with one hand. She was observant, just like her father. Heavy? Heh, that thing's nothing. I'm a strong guy, after all. He had been about to say ninja, but then he remembered Sakura's words from the previous night. She wouldn't believe him, and he felt no need to convince her. Naruto knew ninjas existed. He told himself that it was enough. What else could he do about it? Sakura had found the books she needed. Naruto offered to toss the box back onto the cupboard for her. She must have been watching him, because when he came back down again, her eyes were narrowed and she asked him what had happened to the bandages. Naruto looked at his exposed wound, then at the floor. The dressing had slipped off while he had been hefting the box. I lost the tape, he explained sheepishly. Why did you take it off? Oh, never mind. Stay here. Sakura left the room with a sigh, looking slightly irritated. He heard her going down the stairs. There was nothing he could do but oblige. Naruto had seen ill-tempered women before and his gut told him Haruno Sakura should not be messed around with. She was a tiger, that one. A strange one, but still freakily terrifying when she got down to it. She was uncannily like Tsunade. Except for the chest, Naruto sniggered. Sakura was not quite well endowed, but as Jiraiya said, big ones, small ones, as long as they have them, it's all mighty good. He was still sniggering when Sakura returned. She gave him a funny look and ordered him to sit on the bed. Naruto obeyed without complaint. She pulled the chair over to him and sat on it, setting a familiar white box on her lap. When he realized what she was going to do, he said, You don't have to fix it up again. It's not like it hurts or anything. No, but it will get irritated, and if it gets dirty it could get infected, she replied sharply. Hold your arm out. Kazuo can dash. She rolled her eyes. Dad takes forever in the bathroom. Then she eyed him. I am a doctor's daughter, she told him, as if he had verbally doubted her capabilities. Naruto watched her wrap fresh bandages around his arm. Are you sure you have the time to do this? He asked her hesitantly. Aren't you, late for school? You're such a winner. Sakura produced a roll of adhesive tape, having worked quickly and efficiently. She didn't have to clean and disinfect the wounds, so she managed it faster than her father had. I usually try not to be late, but I think I can get away with telling the teacher I ran into an injured cat or something. I'm a prefect, after all. She said it with the same air as she had proclaimed herself as a doctor's daughter. Sakura applied an excessive amount of tape, going as far as to wrap a strip of it on each end. Since you're so clumsy, she let him know, smiling at his indignant expression. What about you? Don't you have school to go to? He shook his head. I graduated already. This seemed to surprise her. How old are you? 17 in October. Once again, he was the subject of a weird look. So you are 17. It's the start of November. November? Isn't it April? Naruto frowned. He had never been good at remembering dates, but this was quite a margin. No, it's November. Sakura looked over at a calendar above the bed. Yeah, it's the 5th of November. Oh. Something wasn't right. He was certain it wasn't anywhere near November. He would have remembered his own birthday. It was wrong. So many things were different in this place. You're my age, so you should still be going to school, Sakura was saying. She paused to give him a calculative look. Unless you dropped out. But I don't have time to work this out. I am so late. Just like that, she shoved him back his arm and hurriedly packed books into her bag. I think I missed the bus. Damn, Ino's going to have another crack at me. The thought of this Ino person and whatever she would do was enough to make her groan. The books that looked heavy and didn't seem to fit, she carried. She slipped the satchel over her head and looked about ready to sprint out of the house, but she held herself back at the last moment to look at him one last time. Thanks? Naruto thought that was what she was waiting for. You're welcome. Sakura hesitated, seeming to come to a decision. She gave him a simple nod. It was nice meeting you, Naruto. Even if you are a pervert. Then, with a fleeting smile, she really did sprint across the landing. It wasn't until he heard the front door slam shut that Naruto realized that he would probably never see her again. Thinking back to the past 15 or so hours, it had been nice knowing her. Sakura had been a little difficult to begin with, but Naruto was hardly one to talk. He grudgingly acknowledged that he was the one who had gotten them started on the wrong foot. At least she seemed to have forgiven him now. Too bad their brief acquaintance had pretty much revolved around, perversion. It was hardly his fault that they were always caught in the most unwelcome of situations. He blamed Jiraiya and his naughty books. But was Naruto ready to leave yet? He could tell that his chakra was still unrecovered. He thought his reserves had refilled by a very tiny proportion, but it was hardly anything. He would exhaust it with a single shadow clone. It wouldn't stop him from finding his way back to Konoha, but what would he do if he ran into enemy forces? If by that time his chakra had not returned, he would be a sitting duck. Not to mention that his movements would be slower, and he would tire easily. Common sense told him to remain in this unfamiliar place for a while longer. He hadn't been attacked yet, and Naruto's previous presumption that he was trapped in a genjutsu was waning. Even someone like Pain would not be able to produce such realistic illusions. Haruno, Kazuo, and Sakura had substance to them, striking human elements that had to be genuine. Not even Itachi, if he were still alive, would have managed something like this. And even if they could, good for them. They wouldn't need the tailed beasts if they could create something so authentic. Naruto had no shame for falling for it. Sakura must have been in a big hurry if she left you in her room. He wasn't startled. He had heard the footsteps and knew it could only be Kazuo. The man was leaning against the door, buttoning up one of his shirts. It's a really girly room, Naruto commented. There was a plush toy by his hand. He picked it up, wondering if it was a cat or a hamster. He had never gotten around to understanding the female attraction to cute things. Gamachan was about as cute could get for him. It was unfortunate that his frog wallet wasn't as robust as he was, and had been worn down from the many fights to the point where Naruto had to heartbrokenly throw it away. Kazuo was looking at him. What does your room look like, kid? It's not much. Bit messy, actually. My bed's nice, though. It felt weird not sleeping in that old bed with the almost too thin blankets. It felt weird not to be home. Where's this room of yours? Naruto knew where Kazuo was getting at. He was a ninja skilled at perception. Well, he was supposed to be. Kazuo was a smart man. In my house. And where's your house? Home. Now Kazuo's eyes glinted. And where's home? Naruto sighed. Alright, you got me. I already told you I was lost, didn't I? You live somewhere, kid. I'm trying to help you out. And he was. Kazuo was a cordial host Naruto could not have asked more of. The man would probably deliver him home if he knew how. No wonder he was a doctor. Shizune was like that too. Tell me about this fire country. This time Naruto was certainly taken aback. He had remembered. No point, is there? You don't know where it is. He shrugged. His words were chosen carefully and spoken slowly. That's true. The man agreed. But you don't seem to either. Hey, I'm not that bad with directions. Kazuo did up his tie in front of Sakura's vanity mirror. He wasn't even looking at Naruto through the reflection. He was so nonchalant about everything, it was confusing. How are you going to find your way home, Uzumaki Naruto? He asked. It was almost like he knew what the teenager was going to ask. Naruto exhaled slowly, getting to his feet. You've been a very nice guy, Kazuo. You took me home, patched me up, you gave me ramen. Anyone who treats me to ramen gets in my good book. Naruto licked his lips. He was horrible at asking for favors. Are you trying to suck up to me, kid? Kazuo was looking at him, an indication that he was paying attention. Naruto shook his head. I'm just telling the truth, that's all. Kazuo raised an eyebrow but gestured for him to continue. So, I'm lost, okay? I don't know how to get home, but I know someone who might. If Kazuo sensed that he was hiding something, he didn't show it. Except I can't get in touch with that someone right now. So, he drew out the single syllable, giving his audience a sheepish grin. Do you mind if I stayed here for a bit longer? I'll be gone by the end of the week, he added quickly. It seemed that Kazuo needed to think about it this time around. His face was expressionless, so Naruto couldn't quite tell what the man was thinking. As the minutes trickled by, he He began to think that he'd hit the limit, and was about to weather himself for the harsh streets when Kazuo unfolded his arms and said, "You're still taking the couch." Naruto stared at him for a while before his exuberance swelled. "Sure thing." Somehow, he didn't think Kazuo would appreciate a hug, so he just smiled really, really brightly. So you wouldn't mind if I stayed in these clothes for today? I haven't worn those pants for years." Kazuo eyed the garments with a faint look of nostalgia. "I can wear them to sleep as well?" "It depends if Sakura is insistent on lending you her pajamas." Naruto cringed. "I don't think she'll have a problem with it." He shuddered. Then he gave the older male an accusing look. "I bet you planned that thing last night just to embarrass me." It wasn't that Kazuo was emotionless. It was just that he seemed so level-headed that it was hard to surprise him. Perhaps that was why Naruto had to blink a couple of times to check if his host was really smiling. It didn't stay for long, as Kazuo started to turn away. "It's about time for me to go to work," he said. "I won't be back for dinner tonight, but Sakura knows that, and now so do you." It hadn't occurred to him how anxious he had been until he had Kazuo's assurance that he could stay. His curiosity perked right up. "You're really a doctor, huh?" Kazuo looked at him. "You doubted me?" He just shrugged. "All right, I'm leaving. I wouldn't go out if I were you, since I'm not going to give you spare keys. But nothing's stopping you. Try not to get run over again." Naruto scowled and stuck his tongue out. He was surprised when Kazuo rolled his eyes. Sakura resembled her father more than he'd thought. "You can have the rest of the ramen if you're hungry." Naruto waited, but Kazuo was already walking down the hallway. He got up and followed him. "And?" he prompted. "And what?" the man asked. "Aren't you going to tell me not to break or steal anything? Or to stay out of your room? Something like that? You're just going to leave me in your house?" "I am not a babysitter, kid." Kazuo stopped by the door to put on his shoes. "You're seriously telling me that my word will stop you from doing those things?" Naruto was indignant. "I wouldn't do any of that." He frowned. He was an honorable ninja, for God's sake. He might have borrowed some of Jiraiya's books without asking, but the old hermit hardly counted as a victim. Picking up a briefcase, Kazuo straightened and smoothed his shirt. "See you later, kid." "It's Naruto!" the blonde called after him, jumping back before the door could slam in his face. If anything did hit him, it was the silence. Naruto was alone in the house. Technically, it meant he could do anything he wanted. But all he really wanted was to go home. No, he needed to go home. For all he knew, Konoha could be losing the war. Meditation wasn't Uzumaki Naruto's forte. Actually, he hated anything that required him to sit down and shut up, but he had come to know meditation through the sage training he had been put through, and Jiraiya made sure he knew that meditating would help him access his prisoner without having to wait until he was about to get killed. Naruto didn't stick with the cross-legged position. He just did whatever was comfortable, and sitting on the couch with his head in his hands suited him fine. "All right, Kyubi," he muttered, closing his eyes. "Let's talk." It took quite a few minutes for him to settle down. Emptying his thoughts as well as he could, Naruto cast his consciousness into the back of his mind, delving into the seal. No matter how hard he tried to describe it, there was no way he could adequately recall how he did it. He just did. Jiraiya often scoffed that he fidgeted too much, but it worked, and no one could complain. Naruto couldn't help but feel horribly dirty each time he visited the sewerage environment that was the Kyubi's den. It wasn't just the dingy decor. The demon's chakra was at its strongest here, and it felt like it had seeped into the moldy walls like rust. It was hard to believe that such a dark place existed in his subconsciousness. It made the Kyubi look much less appealing, and it hadn't been very good looking to begin with. He had only taken a few steps before he sensed that something was off. There was usually an abundance of red chakra swirling around, or at least making the air heavy. Naruto could hardly feel anything, not even when he stopped and concentrated. His lack of chakra obviously had something to do with the demon fox. It was enough to make him think. Kyubi was an all-powerful demon. How the hell had it freaking run out of chakra? Was it even possible? At least the towering metal gates had not changed much. Naruto planted his feet in front of them, crossing his arms. "Oh, furball, get out of dash!" His voice broke off and he froze. It wasn't instigated by the lack of response from his tenant, even though Kyubi was quick to respond to disparaging nicknames. It was the paper bearing the kanji 4 seal that was stuck high on the gates, keeping them shut. Half the paper had been burned away. A chill ran up Naruto's spine as he tried to comprehend what had raised the 4th Hokage's powerful seal. It would still suffice in its purpose of holding the demon in, but it would definitely complicate things. He needed to ask Jiraiya. But first, he had to talk to the Kyubi. It was depressing that the demon was the only familiar presence he could turn to. It had spent so long declaring how almighty it was, it had better know what had happened to them and how they could get back. Two parties were required to hold up a conversation. Unfortunately, the Kyuubi didn't seem to feel up to it. It was weird, it had never missed a chance to have a jab at Naruto. So many things weren't going the way they always did. Warm air gusted from within the gates as a low rumbling emanated from the dark space. Naruto stepped up to the gates, going as far to poke his head between two of the bars. It was impossible to see through the pitch blackness, but he could sense the demon there. It felt faint. "Fox?" he called. "Hey, what are you doing back there? Come out, I want to talk." Nothing. He could hear something akin to growling, but wasn't quite the same. It took a few more drafts of the hot air for him to come to a startling realization. The Kyuubi was sleeping. "What in the world?" Naruto exclaimed, bewildered. "Hey, wake up!" Something nagged at the back of his mind. From his knowledge, the demon had never needed to sleep before. It didn't feel like it had suddenly decided on an afternoon nap either. He had a feeling his lack of chakra stemmed from the Kyuubi's slumber. In fact, the Kyuubi seemed tired. It's impossible, he thought. And by no exaggeration it was. A tailed beast held close to infinite chakra reserves, and the nine tails was supposed to be the most powerful of the beasts. It was such a colossal force that it could almost be comparable to nature itself. How could something like that get tired? Naruto felt his concentration crack. He could only hold the visits for so long, but he rarely needed this much time. The gate was starting to recede, swiftly retreating away from him. Naruto watched with narrowed eyes as it faded into blackness. It hurt to look at the pale-washed walls when he opened his eyes. The clock told him he had been immersed in the den for almost half an hour. What had he gotten out of it? Not much besides the ridiculous knowledge that a demon was tired. He had never before wished so much that he was wrong. Deep down, Naruto felt that this meant something bad, very bad. It was more than a gut feeling. He stretched as he got to his feet, sighing. As usual, there was nothing he could do about it. There was barely anything he could do lately. It felt like so much had happened, yet only a day had passed. It was only hitting midday. There was no telling when Sakura would be back. Kazuo hadn't restricted him from doing anything in particular. Naruto's mind was set on a shower. He felt dirty despite his physical cleanliness. He always did after visiting the Kyuubi, and he made it a point to cleanse himself if he could. It was another of his bizarre habits. He had been given a towel to use last night. Naruto fished it out of the laundry basket and went upstairs. It would have been nice to have clean underwear on hand, but he'd be damned if he was going to look through Kazuo's wardrobe for boxers. It was heavenly to have a shower without the hot water getting cut off, so he spent as long as he could under the water, letting it pound against his shoulders and back. Sakura had pleasant-smelling shampoo, he noted as he tipped some into his hand. He knew it couldn't be Kazuo's, it was too floral-scented. There wasn't much to do after the shower. Naruto tried out the television while his hair dried. There were more channels than he was used to, but nothing good was on. No action-packed cartoons or anything of the like. He flicked it off after 10 minutes of watching a guy cook some sort of curry. Any more and I'll be all over the kitchen, he thought gravely. But he went over and ate a few more slices of cold toast anyway, finishing the plate. Within minutes he was bored. Anyone who knew Uzumaki Naruto would have called Kazuo insane for leaving him to his own devices, especially in his own house. In fact, Naruto himself wasn't even sure if he could pass the day without causing some kind of catastrophe. He liked to think that he knew what he was doing. Most of the time, anyway. It wasn't quite his fault that the Hokage's chair had broken down after he sat on it, dived on it. Tsunade had chewed him out for hours. He definitely would not be able to cause damage to property if he wasn't in the house. Staying inside hadn't boded very well with him anyway. Naruto was keen to see more of this strange place, and work out some connection back to the Leaf Village. The only thing holding him back was hesitation and the fear of getting lost. His defenses broke down easily. Naruto was adamant to leave one of the ground floor windows unlocked so he could climb back in, and lock the front door. The first thing he saw was one of the hunks of metal on wheels, a car, he reminded himself. Then the warmth of the sun danced on his skin, the rays making him squint. It was a nice day. Nothing short of Akatsuki dropping out of the sky could change that. He took a good look at the Haruno's house before he set off, hands in pockets. He didn't have plans to venture far. He only hoped he could find his way back afterwards. Naruto took a look around the block, admiring the variety of houses. Even the construction material they used differed from the village buildings. People didn't look at him twice now, he noticed. Getting rid of the scruffy clothes must have helped. After observing some of the men, Naruto could almost say that he looked like them. At least, the clothes did. No one wore padded vests or kunai pouches on their thighs. He could not see a single person who looked like a ninja. He couldn't even pinpoint anyone who looked like they could defend themselves if he suddenly launched himself at them. Then he came across a small group of people standing by the edge of the pavement, waiting for something. Interested, Naruto walked up to them, trying to see what they were looking at. The answer was nothing. They were just waiting. After a while, he tapped a young boy with a bicycle on the shoulder. "What are you guys waiting for?" he asked, leaning over. The kid was only as tall as his elbow. "The light's stupid," the boy retorted. He looked at Naruto with distaste. "Big kids these days are such dorks." Naruto's hand slammed down on the kid's head, musing up his hair. "Hey, treat me with some respect, will ya? You don't go around calling people stupid like that." He was distantly aware of a bleeping sound, and that the other people they had been standing with were walking across the road. The little boy broke free, scowling. "Stupid!" he called over his shoulder, as he wheeled his bike across the road. "Brat!" Naruto retaliated. He was tempted to follow, but the cars were moving again. He hadn't noticed that they had stopped specifically for the people. Damn, I should have followed them. He was determined to cross the road without getting run over, so he waited just like the others had. A portion of park poked out on the other side of the street, enticing him. But the cars didn't stop for him. Naruto started getting annoyed and waved at a couple of the drivers. He was widely ignored. Why didn't they stop for him? He was on the verge of giving up when an old lady drew up beside him. She pressed at a button on the pole. About 2 minutes later, a light on another pole across the road lit up with a picture of a green person, and the cars halted. Naruto's jaw dropped. A button, a button. He was kicking himself as he jogged over to the other side. Cheap tricks. He was not going to fall for that again. The park was nowhere near as large as the first one. Unlike the one Naruto had woken up in, it wasn't just an expanse of green. It contained a small playground. Naruto was immediately drawn to the swings. There were a bunch of kids crawling over the slides and playing tag. He spotted the snotty kid from before. It was the sight of the boy playing with his friends that held him back from teaching the kid a good lesson. It was a privilege to have friends, and Naruto would never ruin that for any child. Naruto had spent an unhealthy portion of his childhood clinging to the wooden swing outside the academy. It had been his only sanctuary. Now, rocking lightly on another swing in another place, he felt a pang of solitude. He didn't know anyone here. He did not appreciate the reminder that companionship, or lack thereof, could be so painful. Having spent years gaining recognition and bonding friendships, it gave him insecurity to think that he had still ended up alone in the end. It wasn't fair. Then he shook his head. What was he thinking? He always looked on the bright side. He wasn't going to think about how isolated he was, or fret over the possibility that he would never be able to find his way home. At least, he would try not to. If the day was going to pass regardless of his mood, he might as well pass each day with happiness. A newcomer arrived, stirring commotion among the children. Naruto raised his head. At first, he thought it was Sakura. It was the same pleated skirt and blouse. Of course, with Sakura's hair, it was easy to tell that this girl was not her. The exact same clothes? Naruto wondered. The girl appeared to be the sister of one of the kids and was dragging him home. The kid complained but was eventually overpowered. The playgroup gradually split up, some getting picked up, others making their own way home. At least they know which way to go, Naruto mused. To think that he was jealous of a kid. It was laughable. He sat on the swing until more girls wearing the same clothes as Sakura had started to pass by the park. It was most likely some kind of compulsory uniform. Naruto waited a while longer, but eventually he got bored of waiting for Sakura to turn up and started heading back the way he remembered coming from. She probably took another path home, and he didn't even know if seeing the uniformed girls meant that school was over for her as well. Regardless, he planned to beat her back to the house. He did. Clambering in through the window, Naruto could tell instantly that Sakura was not back yet. He hoped she would be soon. There was nothing for him to do here, no construction work, no Ichirakus, no drama, no one trying to kill him. Emerging from a land plagued by war into a place where the worst that could happen was getting lost was a drastic shift that Naruto could not adjust to. He needed to do something. So he started making lunch. He found the leftover ramen in the fridge and spent some time trying to figure out how to use the microwave. When he thought he had the hang of it, the front door opened, keys rattling. Sakura stepped inside, dropping her bag by the side of the door. Surprise flickered across her face at the sight of the blonde boy in the kitchen before she seemed to remember. He wondered if she knew he would be staying for the rest of the week. Naruto grinned at her. "Welcome home." She cracked a smile at the irony. You are so lucky you don't have to go to school, she told him as she kicked off her shoes. Heh, I told you I graduated. Oh yeah, did you get in trouble for being late? Nope. The teacher hadn't arrived yet. I was only late by a couple of minutes anyway. I ran. Sakura reached over her shoulder, rubbing at her neck. I'm going to take a quick shower, she said absently. He made a shooing motion at her. She looked tired. School must be tough. He couldn't remember much of his academy years, but he did remember that he hardly ever did his homework. Intuition told him they did not practice throwing shuriken and jutsus here. Sakura's shower was as quick as she said it would be. She returned just as Naruto located a pair of chopsticks in one of the many drawers. Where's mine? She looked pointedly at the ramen as she toweled her hair. Naruto hunched over his meal protectively. You can starve, he said playfully. He eyed the can of soda she got out of the fridge. Where's mine? You can die of thirst, she said. So mean. She rolled her eyes and reached back for another. Catch. Naruto slurped up his noodles and placed the can on the table in front of him. He watched Sakura look through the cupboards, and felt like a bully when she pulled out a frying pan. I'd share but. He gestured sheepishly at his noodles. Glancing over at him, she snorted. No way. You eat like a pig. He made a face at her. Need help? He offered. I can take care of myself. I'm a girl, after all. She waved the spatula around and gave him a look that seemed to promise extreme pain if he dared reveal that he was sexist. He blinked blankly at her. Sighing, she heated up the stove. Just eat your lunch, Naruto. Yes, ma'am. He kept an eye on her. She could crack eggs with one hand. It had taken him years and cartons of eggs to perfect that particular skill. Thanks for the breakfast, by the way, he added in a softer voice. Sakura just smirked. Naruto had just about finished his ramen when Sakura sat down with her stir-fry. He took his bowl to the sink, rinsed it and left it to dry, then went back to his seat. That smells really good, he observed. She tauntingly waved a spoonful in front of his nose. You can starve, she said, echoing him. She ate slowly, savoring her companion's wistful glare more than the meal. You know, I was thinking. Is this usually how you treat strangers? His question made Sakura blink. No, actually. Usually I'm a bit politer. How come you're not polite to me then? Naruto attempted to look wounded. She looked thoughtful as she ate. Dunno. She shrugged finally. Maybe because we're the same age. Or it could just be you. You're a bit of an idiot if you asked me. He sipped at his soda. It was fizzier than the drinks he generally stocked. I didn't, Naruto groused. And what about you? Do you usually get lost and stay at random people's houses? So Kazuo must have already told her. At least she didn't seem to mind. He wouldn't be too sure though, girls were unpredictable. They changed their minds in a snap, it was crazy. Well, I get lost pretty often, but nah, I don't go around borrowing couches, he answered. He peered carefully at her. Are you okay with me staying here for another week? Sakura looked a little serious now. You know what, Naruto? I didn't exactly like the idea of my dad bringing you home and letting you stay over. Not only are you a pervert, we didn't even know you. She gave him an apologetic look, but he waved it away, hiding a grimace. But well, I don't see anything stolen, and the house hasn't burned down or anything. I think I can deal with you for a week. Yeah? You're not that bad, I suppose? Abruptly, she narrowed her eyes at him. As long as you stay out of my pajamas. Her cheeks still gained a rosy tint despite her steely tone. I wouldn't wear them again even if you paid me, he assured her. Good. They did the dishes together after Sakura had finished eating. Are you sure you don't mind? Naruto wanted to make sure. Soap water flecked on his cheek. Geez, I didn't know you were such a wussy. Wussy? Excuse me? He sputtered. I was just thinking for your sake, what with me being a guy and you a girl? Sakura stopped. Silence fell as they stared at each other for several moments. Then she groaned. Thanks for bringing it up. I didn't even think of that. You're kidding me, right? Don't you remember what happened last night? His eyes were wide. Last baka? She slapped him on the back. Hard, surprisingly so. Naruto lurched forward, his head almost hitting the tap. Sakura was already wiping her hands and stalking away when he recovered. Where are you going? He was confused. That is one heck of a blush she's got on her face. Packing. Oh. I think I did something stupid again. You don't have to leave just because I'm a guy. I'll just be here for a few more days. It's not like I can sleepwalk into your room or anything. And not that, Sakura spun around and pointed an accusing finger at him. You don't knock when you walk into rooms, do you? Eh? Not really. His answer seemed to deepen her rosy complexion. I'm packing, she said again. Before Naruto could blink, he could hear her storming up the stairs. He poked his head over the counter. Packing what? Never mind. Naruto frowned. It kept nagging at him as he finished washing the pan and set them on the rack. Tsunade hadn't been like this. But then, Tsunade was old enough to be Sakura's grandmother. Maybe teenage girls were different. Oh. Sakura? What? She yelled down. A second later, she added in a voice slightly higher than her usual one. You're not coming up here, are you? Naruto traced his steps back down the stairs. Of course not, he yelled back. I was just wondering something. What? Are you packing away your girl stuff? That silenced her. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest, nodding sagely. He knew it. It's all right. I don't even know the difference between, what are they called again? Tamp dash. You idiot! Don't, ugh, how in the world am I going to survive you for a week? With that, the door slammed shut. Again, Naruto noted, remembering last night. He stood at the bottom of the stairs for another minute before throwing himself onto the couch, sulking. Girls, Naruto moaned aloud. Isn't there a single jutsu that will help me understand them? Apparently not. Chapter 3, Little Wonders. I'm going to kill you, you bumbling oaf! Gingerly, Naruto picked himself up the grimy floor, brushing himself off. Then he glared at the familiar mass of crimson chakra shaped into a bubbling representation of the den's resident. I was actually having a good dream until you popped in, he said irritably. Where were you when I actually came looking for you, huh? You were sleeping. He answered his own question, ignoring the relief breathing through his being. A massive claw slammed against the metal bars. Naruto eyed the seal as it flapped hazardously at the impact. You! The Kyuubi snarled. You wanted to know what happened, let me tell you what happened. You got caught. It spat out the last word. Naruto stared into the beast's narrowed eyes. What do you mean I got caught? He demanded. But he could already feel a sinking sensation as his mind reluctantly put together the pieces. He didn't exactly need the Kyuubi's confirmation, whatever dull snippets of it he actually heard. It hit him like a physical blow, snatching his energy away, and it took him most of his resolve not to reel back staggering. Pain had defeated him. Akatsuki had the last of the tailed beasts. He had failed. Naruto closed his eyes, struggling to accept reality, that he had single-handedly made vain of everyone's efforts and sacrifices. Dimly, he heard the Kyuubi's rumbling voice, but he registered none of the words. It was undoubtedly going on about how much of an idiot he was. The Nine-Tails despised imprisonment, and Naruto almost cackled thinking of how enraged it must be to have been captured in the same manner as its fellow demons. Wait a minute, he blurted, cutting through the Kyuubi's speech. Before it could reprimand him, he went on to ask. What the hell are you doing here then? You were sealed by pain, weren't you? How am I alive? He was thinking of Gaara and of how he had been able to do nothing but scream in agonized fury over his friend's lifeless body. Cerulean eyes widened as the Kyuubi let out a bellow of laughter. You lowly humans are so naive. Naruto stared. Those fools! The beast continued exultantly. They thought they could contain me? I am the most powerful of all the tailed beasts. It raised its great head with self-satisfaction. For some reason its confidence was not assuring in the least. What did you do? Naruto said slowly. The Kyuubi leered at him. Simple. I tore a fissure in time and space. You what? No. No way. Impossible. Did you think I was going to be controlled by the likes of you filthy humans? What? Naruto said, his voice suddenly harsher than he'd ever heard it. Did you do? The Kyuubi looked piercingly at him, and when the blonde failed to look perturbed, it gave a snort and muttered something coarse. You heard me. I forced open the veil of time to escape the ceiling. He couldn't contain it. You can do that? Che, how do you think we got here, idiot? You forget that I am the Nine-Tails. The technicalities failed to make sense to Naruto, but he did come to one conclusion. So we're not home. He could answer that himself, a deafening no. Whatever the Kyuubi had done had catapulted them into another time. It was mind-blowing. Somehow, even though he had supposedly escaped death, that made him feel even worse. His head was spinning. So you are 17. It's the start of November. November? Isn't it April? That answered a lot of questions. No wonder this place was so alien. Naruto's knuckles were white. Is there a way we can go back? he asked quietly. There was a pause. I am not going to do that for you, human. This is the first time I have attempted to interfere with time itself. Even if I did tear open another veil, it would not be the exact time we came from. So your answer is no. The single word resounded off the cold walls and rang sharply in his ears. In other words, he would never be able to go home. He would never see his friends or that pervy sage again. Naruto pressed the heel of his palm into his eyes. What am I doing? He thought fiercely. It's not like I'm going to cry or anything. Of course he wasn't going to cry. He was a weathered ninja, for crying out loud. And he would never be able to become Hokage. How are you going to find your way home, Uzumaki Naruto? Why did I do it? The Kyuubi gave a bark of incredulous laughter. Brat, you are alive because I did what I did. This is what makes your species so weak. You wallow in your emotions and let them influence your decisions. To think that someone with the likes of you could contain me, pathetic. It growled when Naruto remained silent, eyes squeezed tightly shut. Raise your head, human. Look at me. Numbly, Naruto heaved out a heavy breath and met the demon's patronizing glare. What was the stupid fox getting all worked up over anyway? It didn't have a freaking care in the world. It was alive, and it obviously couldn't care less if its host spent the rest of his days bemoaning his fate. Boy, it said impatiently. You are alive because I interfered. If I had just left it as it was, you would be dead. Think about that. I saved your worthless life. Now be grateful. There was not a single hint of concern in its voice, and perhaps it was just his fraught desire to know that someone cared, but Naruto found himself clenching his fists and shaking his head. Just how much more of this could he take? You know what? He said suddenly and loudly. I'm tired of you, Kyuubi. You think you did me a favor by saving my life, but I'm not going to thank you. You want me to live because you'd die if I did. Well, let me tell you something. He grinned nastily. Screw you. He jabbed a finger at himself. I'm going to live because I want to, not because you like bossing people around, got that? It was in times like these that Naruto saw the Kyuubi as the intelligent being it was. It was obviously aggravated, but it also seemed to understand who held the cards at the moment. Good pussycat. He approved, suddenly feeling very weary, very old. The smile gradually waned. So, tell me how you did it. I don't feel obliged to, simpleton. You, who foolishly ignore my power, would never understand the greatness of my abilities. Naruto crossed his arms, not budging. Try me. The Kyuubi's eyes narrowed to slits. Your precious Yondaime seal. It finally hissed. It was breaking down. I took advantage of it and ripped open a dimension to another time. Wait. The remainder of your chakra? Exactly how much of you got sealed? Half, before the seal deteriorated enough for me to take control. The weakened beast fired up again when Naruto balked. This is your fault, brat. We lost because you wouldn't let me help Dash. Help, Naruto muttered bitterly. Yeah, right. Silence, the Kyuubi thundered furiously. It was your blundering around that landed us in this situation. If only this damned seal had totally disintegrated, I would tear off your unworthy hide. One day, I will be free from you. In all honesty, Naruto was surprised the seal was still holding up. Yes, he could feel the demon's presence stronger than ever, but he thought the seal would have been the first thing to go when the extraction began. The Yondaime was indeed the legend everyone said he was. Can't you, get it back or something? Your power? He asked the Kyuubi. No. It's not even possible for me to absorb it back because we are cut off in a different time dimension. As it was, I barely had enough resources to transport us here. I had to borrow the King of Hell statue's strength. Shut your trap, human. The Kyuubi snapped when Naruto raised his eyebrows. I simply made use of what I had. All you did was whine pathetically in pain. With another unimpressed snort, its massive form coiled in on itself, retreating into the inky blackness. You are annoying. Leave, human. Naruto direly wished he knew how Konoha was doing. Had it fallen? What would Akatsuki do now that it was fundamentally impossible to capture the Nine Tails? Would half the demon's power suffice for their ambition? He was getting sick of all the questions that continued to pop up. He had no answers to any of them. But he did know two things. 1. He was screwed. 2. He would have to live with it. He woke to the sound of the front door creaking shut. Naruto turned his head to look at the wall clock, 8:30. Kazuo must have left for work. Having had 3 days to study the Haruno's behavioral patterns, Naruto discovered that Kazuo occasionally left the house at absurd hours. When Hinata had started working casual hours at the hospital to compensate for the shortage of medic needs, she had told him that she had to be prepared at any time of day to save a life. Naruto shuddered at the thought of waking up at 3 in the morning. Tucking one arm under his head, Naruto gazed up at the pale ceiling. No cracks or chipped paintwork. He'd never wake up to the spiderweb of cracks in his apartment's ceiling again. Nor would he. He severed his train of thought there. He didn't need to list them. It would only rub salt in the wound. At least it was guaranteed that there was no Akatsuki here. The last thing I need is for them to pop up. Naruto sighed. He hoped this place didn't harbor any megalomaniacs. They say time flies when you're having fun. Naruto was not enjoying himself in the least, but when he looked at the clock again he found that he had been brooding for almost 20 minutes. New day, he announced gloomily to no one in particular. New life, a cynical voice reminded. He mentally swatted it away. Naruto resignedly patted his way upstairs and into the bathroom. His gaze settled on a lone toothbrush set in the wall as he gargled some of the mouthwash Kazuo had given him. It had hit him for a round when he had figured out that Sakura was the only one who shared the bathroom with him, since Kazuo's room had its own bathroom. It was an intriguing experience, sharing a bathroom with a girl. On the topic of Sakura, Naruto couldn't help but notice that her bedroom door was still closed. She usually left it open if she was not inside. He could feel her presence too, and again he had to marvel at her faint chakra capacity. Curiosity encouraged him to turn away from the staircase and gently ease open the door. Treading silently, he stepped inside. It was the first time he had seen Sakura asleep in her bed. She was curled up on her side and Naruto could see that she was hugging one of her stuffed animals to her chest. Her face was so peaceful that he had to chuckle. It was actually quite cute. She hadn't gone to school the previous day there, so he assumed it was the weekend and there was no school. He liked to take a break on the weekend too. He stood there for a few more minutes before it dawned on him that a guy in a sleeping girl's room probably wasn't the best idea. Pausing, he tentatively reached for Sakura's blanket and tucked it around her shoulders, careful not to disturb her, and then exited the room. Wow, she really was serious about hiding her girl stuff, he thought vaguely. Then he knuckled himself in the head to ward away any thoughts that would further taint his innocence. It was almost 9 o'clock, breakfast time, Naruto's stomach decided. He would think about the other matters later. He had all the time in the world, didn't he? He was disappointed to find that there was hardly anything in the fridge. After digging through the cupboards and double-checking the fridge once more, Naruto realized that he could only make bacon and eggs. It took him a couple of minutes to go through all the cupboards and find the pan, and he hunted for plates while it was heating up. My cooking skills must be more out of whack than I thought, Naruto mused when the first egg stuck amateurishly to the bottom of the pan. He was constantly in a rush because of the war, so ramen, or some other snack usually sufficed. With some prayers to the cooking gods, the rest of the meal emerged relatively presentable. He entertained himself by arranging the ingredients into a disfigured face, using some grapes and carrots he had uncovered only moments ago for the nose and eyebrows. He set the table and then bounded upstairs to wake up the pink-haired girl. Naruto admitted that he was a little more excited than was necessary. He felt very satisfied with himself for returning the favor. Sakura was still curled up on her bed. He squatted beside her, smiling at the way her mouth was hanging slightly open. She'd probably blush and smack him upside the head if he told her that. He shook her on the shoulder lightly. Her brow furrowed, but she didn't wake. Naruto was slightly tempted to wake her up in more creative ways, except he didn't think Sakura would appreciate that. So he continued to shake her. Sakura. Brekkie time. Sakura. He grinned when her eyes slowly opened. Wakey wa, OW. She had yelped at the sight of his face, mere inches from hers, and instinctively backhanded him. Good morning? Naruto groaned from the floor. Alarm was sketched all over Sakura's face. He noted arbitrarily that her bed hair was rather exotic. Don't do that! She exclaimed, clutching her toy tightly. He must have freaked her out. Self-defense, Naruto's mind supplied unhelpfully. Yeah, thanks. You don't think you could have warned me a little earlier? Sakura blinked down at him, as if just registering that he was there. It looked like she was going to ask him what he was doing down there. Before she could, though, her eyes lit up as she remembered. Oops, she said apologetically, offering her his hand. She yawned behind the other as the shock wore off. What did you wake me up for? Breakfast, he replied. She looked adorable rubbing her eyes like that. Okay, I'll be down. Wait, breakfast? Despite his sore rear and face, Naruto puffed out his chest smugly. Yep. Her jade eyes widened. You made breakfast? For me? You bet. He pulled the blanket away from her, sticking his tongue out at her indignant expression, and pulled her to her feet. Go brush your teeth, kid. Go, go, go! He practically steered her out the room. Sakura scowled. Who are you to call me a kid? Doesn't Kazuo ever call you that? That's what he calls me. Well, that's just you, isn't it? She pointed out. She was on the verge of brushing her teeth when she looked over to where he was leaning against the bathroom door. You're not just going to stand there, are you? Eh? She rolled her eyes. I am not going to brush my teeth with you looking over my shoulder. Oh. He backed away, grinning sheepishly. Uzumaki Naruto could take a hint. I'll see you downstairs, yeah? Mem. It wasn't until Naruto was sitting down at the table that he realized that he and Sakura were from entirely different worlds. She had grown up in a time he hadn't existed in. And yet she was still so human, so normal. It was like he wasn't informed of the time difference. She didn't notice anything different about him even though Naruto had just received one of the most shocking revelations of his life. It was bizarre, and a little comforting. Is that supposed to be artistic? That was quick. He hadn't heard Sakura come down. Naruto pasted a grin on his face as he looked over his shoulder. It's a face, can't you see? Eh? Really? Sakura peered at it, spinning the plate around. It sort of looks like one, I guess, somehow. And are those carrots? She received a pleased nod and sat down, shaking her head amusedly. Naruto didn't start eating until Sakura had tried the bacon, and he felt ridiculously delighted when her face lit up with pleasant surprise. I told you, he teased, earning himself a swift kick to the shin. He shut up after that. Not that the meal was entirely silent. It wasn't even uncomfortable like the first night had been. Sakura revealed herself to be a bit of a social butterfly, and she regaled him with various tales. Some fascinated him, others left him confused, but none were boring. Her school was an ugly building, had he seen it before? He shook his head, and she waved her hand dismissively, and told him about the old buildings and rundown quadrangle. Her friend Ino's parents owned a flower shop, he should take a look around sometime. Kazuo had told her the stock market was looking good lately. Naruto stopped her to ask if a stock market was where they sold pigs. She laughed humoredly and patiently explained, but first could he pass her the salt? So, Sakura finished, popping the grape into her mouth. What about you? Naruto looked up, a bit of egg hanging from the corner of his mouth. Rolling her eyes, she handed him a serviette. He blinked at it before wiping his mouth. What about me? What about you? What about me? She kicked him again, she was good at it. Stop avoiding the question, Naruto. Sakura admonished playfully, her eyes twinkling. She was in a good mood. It was a little contagious. I'm a ninja that doesn't seem to exist, I apparently came from the past, and I feel so freaking alone. Yeah, that's me. Naruto just shrugged. I like ramen. He tried, smiling half-heartedly. Right. And? It surprised him that Sakura was actually interested to learn about him. He could count on one hand how many people had ever looked at him with such consideration. He cleared his throat awkwardly. I really like ramen? Oh, you're hopeless. She picked up their plates and tipped them into the sink. How about, do you have any ambitions or anything? Well, of course. I'm gonna be Ho. His voice broke off with a grimace. Sakura cocked her head inquisitively. A ramen chef. He finished lamely. Sakura looked blankly at him for a minute. An unattainable goal is a good one, I guess. Thanks? Naruto replied uncertainly. He was glad that she did not press him. He bluffed his way out of it somewhat unconvincingly, and he had no doubt that Sakura was not deceived. Maybe I should tell her, he considered, then immediately decided against it. There wasn't any point, was there? It wasn't like it would magically teleport him back, and he didn't know if she would accept his reasoning. Even he was struggling with it. It's 10 o'clock. Sakura's voice broke into his thoughts. He looked up to find her smiling at him. Do you feel like going out with me? Naruto stared dumbly. Like a date? No, silly. He winced as she smartly slapped the back of his head. We're going shopping. Wow. Naruto pawed through his vocabulary for a more expressive word, and failed miserably. Wow. Scrape your jaw off the floor before someone steps on it, Naruto. Haven't you been to a shopping center before? Sakura was amused by her companion's dumbfounded expression. Well, I've been to the markets, but this place is gigantic. Trust me, there are larger centers out there. It was challenging to wrap his mind around that. The large building hadn't looked like much from a distance, but now that he was inside, Naruto knew that it housed a colony of shops. All the chatter from the shoppers crowded under the one dome-like roof, becoming a constant drone of voices. Everywhere he looked there was something new. It was nothing like the shops back home. Back home, the two words stung. If he was in a better mood, Naruto would certainly have surrendered to the temptation of adventure by now. But he hadn't, simply because he didn't feel like it. How had he let himself get dragged here anyway? He frowned, aware that his mood shifted in short bursts. He was alright when his predicament slipped his mind, but the minute it came back to him it felt like he was slowly being crushed by an inescapable earth jutsu. If anything, he just wanted to be alone, preferably crawling into a deep dark hole somewhere no one could intrude. "You're blocking the entrance, Naruto." Sakura pulled him aside. The weight of her hand on his arm reminded him of where he was and soothed him enough so that he could see that the doorway was also something else. 2 panes of glass automatically slid open whenever a person approached. Maybe he would find it fascinating another time. "What are we doing here again?" "Shopping, I told you. You're going to help me carry everything back to the house. Time to earn your keep, freeloader." Sakura led him onto some sort of staircase, except it wasn't exactly a staircase because it moved by itself and slowly carried them up to the second level. Naruto grabbed onto the handrail just in case it buckled unreliably, and sent him flying over the edge. It didn't, and they reached higher ground in one piece. He stayed close to Sakura, almost walking right into her. The whole place practically begged him to explore every shop and corner there was, but Naruto was not particularly enthusiastic. Konoha didn't have anything like this. It only served to remind him that he was far from home. He was lost enough as it was. The surroundings were a little more familiar inside the supermarket Sakura led him into. She found a trolley for him to push and wandered down the aisles. Naruto trailed after her, paying only half a mind to what was being tossed into the trolley and what was being said to him. "Naruto, I can't reach. Can you help?" Sure. What you need?" "Up there, no, not that one, to the left, thanks." He hadn't asked Kazuo for a change of clothes, so he had been wearing the same shirt and trousers for days now. Naruto wondered if they smelled. He didn't think they did, Sakura would have told him. The clothes were like some sort of disguise. A very effective disguise at that. As he had noticed a couple of days ago, no one even seemed to consider that he was, well, an outsider. It was baffling that they didn't see that. Only he knew that he did not belong. How would they react if he told them that? Did he even want to know? They were lining up at the checkout before he knew how they had gotten there. Naruto blinked at the heap of contents thrown chaotically into the trolley. Toilet paper, salt, ice cream, detergent. "Do you always do the shopping?" he asked Sakura. She nodded. "Every weekend. Usually I do it on Saturdays, but I got a little sidetracked." "What about Kazuo?" "Dad?" Pfft. Sakura laughed as if he had asked her if the sky was green. It did not escape him that she hadn't answered the question. She crammed the bags into his arms after they left the store. "Hey, wait a minute!" he protested. "Can't we just use the trolley?" "Don't be a baby, it's not that much. See? I'll even help you." "Yeah, conveniently grab the toilet rolls, why don't you?" He bore the load anyway. It was just that bantering with Sakura was rather amusing and helped alleviate his qualms. There was a particular skill to picking good fruit and vegetables that Naruto had never quite mastered. He watched as Sakura stopped by the grocery store and peered down at a stand of bananas. She found herself a basket, and off she went. She settled in with the ease of a mother. Except she wasn't a mother, and that was what bothered Naruto. "Why doesn't Kazuo do the shopping?" "He's too busy, I guess. Or too lazy." He shifted the other bags to one hand and took the basket from her, receiving a small smile of gratitude. "But he's your dad. He's supposed to look after you, right?" Naruto didn't know what it was like to have parents. Jiraiya had been the closest to a father as he'd ever had. "No, don't go there, Naruto." The blonde boy grimaced and focused his attention on Sakura. She was holding a tomato in her hand, but her eyes were distant. He waved a hand in front of her face. Blinking, she snapped out of it. "Huh! Did you say something? Why are you doing the shopping?" "Because I want to." "What about Kazuo?" "He has to work. Could you get me a— oh wait, you don't have any hands." She reached across him for a roll of plastic bags and pulled one off. "Why are you asking me this anyway?" "It's weird. Parents dash." He almost tripped over Sakura when she stopped without warning and looked over her shoulder. "I'm just taking one for the team," she murmured. Then she wandered off toward the fruits, completely forgetting about the tomatoes. Naruto snapped his mouth shut. She didn't look upset or irritated, but Shinobi knew the essence of secrecy better than anyone. If Sakura didn't want to talk about it, that was fine. The curiosity would prod gallingly at him for a while, but he wasn't exactly being entirely truthful either, and he didn't want to be a hypocrite. He felt a small spark of remorse for pressing her, though, and tried to take the bags off her hands when they left the store. She shook her head. Don't be greedy. She looked pointedly at the small colony of shopping bags crowding at his side. They went down the moving stairs again, and Naruto was cautious about stepping off. He felt unbalanced when his feet hit solid ground that didn't move on its own. Seeing his discomfort, Sakura chuckled. Mao, you look like a country boy, Naruto. Where are you from anyway? Konoha. The word tasted weird in his mouth. The syllables were like foreign music. Nostalgia and a sense of hopelessness taunted him. Sakura was oblivious. I haven't heard of it before. Is it far from here? I guess yeah. Is it a nice place? It was still vivid in his mind. He could remember it from the day he'd first stood atop of the Hokage monument. He could remember it even when it was war-torn. It wasn't nice, it was beautiful. It's the only home I've ever known, Naruto said simply, and turned away. Sakura wore an expression of confusion for a moment, her head cocked. After a moment, she just shrugged and tugged at Naruto's arm. This way. They walked into a clothes store. Again, they deposited their load in one of the available trolleys, but Naruto let Sakura push it this time, taking the opportunity to look around. Most clothing stores in Konoha had rolls of fabric and samples to tailor specific requirements for each customer, but this store seemed to have all its garments pre-made and ready to sell. He thoughtfully fingered the fabric of a shirt on the rack as he passed by the aisle. It took him a few minutes to realize that Sakura was not only flicking through the hangers in the aisle, but also looking judgmentally back at him every now and then. What? Naruto asked finally, when her head turned for the 6th time. Her eyes briefly flickered to his face before they resumed appraising his attire. You look pretty good in blue, Naruto, she mused. Naruto blinked. Then he smiled, even though it was a little tight at the edges. Finally noticed I'm handsome, huh? He placed his hands on his hips, purposefully flexing his biceps. Perfect. Don't move. Naruto stiffened, not because of Sakura's order, but rather at the swiftness she approached him. It was likely that he was just on edge, but his instincts screamed at him to recoil and retaliate. Stupid war, making me all paranoid. He exhaled deeply and stood still as Sakura walked around him and flattened something against his back. Several seconds later she took it off, but just as he was turning around she held something else up against him. Naruto tried to look over his shoulder. What are you doing? Do you like short sleeves or long sleeves, Naruto? Short sleeve, I guess. He heard her place some hangers back on the rack. Face me for a second. He did as he was told, and she held up a light blue t-shirt against his front. Her brow was pulled together, and she muttered illegibly under her breath. Naruto turned his head to one side. The tip of the hanger was scratching against his chin. Is Kazuo my size or something? That's a silly question, you're wearing his clothes, Sakura pointed out wryly. He rubbed the back of his neck. It was too early for this. And besides, these are for you. Really? He asked, surprised. Then it sunk in. What? Why are you buying me clothes? Sakura picked out another shirt. You'll be leaving us sooner or later, right? You don't have any clothes of your own, and you can't keep wearing Dad's even if he let you. So I'm in charge of getting you a couple of shirts and pants. Finding himself reluctant to accept gifts from the people who were helping him for nothing, Naruto waved his hands in front of him and protested. Wait. You shouldn't spend money on me like this. A fine eyebrow arched. Why not? Dad even gave me money for it. It's just, you were right, I'm a freeloader. I don't deserve this. He grimaced. I'm sure I can figure something out myself. You don't have to get anything for me. Sakura looked at him, smiling faintly. You're way too modest. No wonder I didn't trust you at first. She was shaking her head. How can someone be so nice? Unsure of what he could say, Naruto just shrugged. Are you really that uncomfortable with us buying you some clothes? He nodded hesitantly. Even when he got free ramen at Ichiraku's, he always helped Ayam wash some dishes, or ate a few more bowls the next day. It was just the way he was. He did not fancy doing things in halves. So would you feel better if you did something in return? Naruto paused, tentative. As much as he was grateful toward the Harinos, he did not want to agree to something he could not do. What do you want me to do? He asked finally. Sakura didn't even have to think about it. You can pick me up from school and carry my bag home for as long as you're staying with us. Naruto fell into a stunned silence. Then, huh! Sakura winced at the volume and some bystanders cast disapproving looks in their direction. Naruto sheepishly waved a hand in apology, and waited until they had turned away before lowering his voice. Are you serious, Sakura? She matched his hushed tone, teasing him. What else can you do? My bag is heavy sometimes, especially if I have my tennis equipment. Yes, but is this all you want from me? Just to pick you up from school? It was too light. It wasn't a punishment, he knew that, but Naruto had been expecting something more extreme. No money, no lifetime promises, no command to steal a forbidden scroll or kill someone. It was preposterously lax. He had been raised to be cautious. But no matter how he looked at it, he could not see why Sakura would need to lie. Take it or leave it, she told him, secretly puzzled by his reaction. When he sighed resignedly, she smiled. I can't believe I'm trying to convince you to let me buy you something. He couldn't believe this either. He didn't mind picking Sakura up. He'd have to ask Kazuo for directions though. But Sakura had said he was too nice. No, he was just doing what he felt was right. Kazuo and Sakura Haruno were the altruistic ones. Sakura picked out 2 shirts for him, one with a bright cartoon on it and the other, on Naruto's insistence, was orange. Apparently, Kazuo had said he could keep his current pants, so they only chose one other from the store. Naruto was directed towards the change room with the items and instructed to try them out for Sakura to judge. When he tried to protest, she just looked at him sternly and said, I've been buying my dad's clothes for years, so shut up. And wisely he did. When they left the store, Naruto wordlessly gathered all the bags, leaving none for Sakura, and she let him do so without comment. She simply understood. Except he didn't. Strangers. The word was so remote. Strangers had given him a roof over his head, had fed him, and were willing to spend money on him, a stray boy with no clothes. Strangers could understand him. What was the world coming to? Since they had quite a lot to carry, Sakura explained that they would catch a bus home. A bus, Naruto soon discovered, was very much like a car, only longer, blockier and with more seats. And quite a few senior citizens. Naruto's legs felt cramped with all the shopping bags at his feet, and he fidgeted relentlessly. He was rapidly developing an undeserved dislike for these bumpy machines. Even so, he was even more unhappy about the clothing arrangement. I could have just worn Kazuo's old clothes, he persisted. Sakura groaned softly. You're still thinking about that? Naruto, it's done. You're so old-fashioned. Old-fashioned? Yeah, I'm probably hundreds of years outdated. It didn't cost that much anyway. Sakura continued. Don't you feel that you would rather have something that belonged to you? Naruto looked at her sadly as she turned to look out the window. His mood had gradually lightened during the shopping trip, but now he could feel it sinking again. I don't even have control over my own life, he wanted to tell her, but kept his mouth tightly shut. Noticing his silence, Sakura looked back at him. You're quiet today, Naruto. Is something wrong? Oh yes, something was wrong. What in Kami's name was he going to do? He knew nothing about this place. He had literally been dumped in the middle of nowhere, and now he was expected to just survive. What sick joke was this? It wasn't funny at all. No. He heard himself lie, to both Sakura and himself. Nothing's wrong. Not for the first time, Kazuo wondered what was wrong with Uzumaki Naruto. Presently, he glanced sideways at the blonde youth sitting on the couch beside him. Naruto's knees were drawn up, a sign of a closed conscience, and his eyes were clouded and didn't appear to take in the program the television was broadcasting. Sakura had reported that Naruto was an enthusiastic individual and had the tendency to ask a lot of questions. The statue sitting beside him was anything but sociable. Teenagers and their unpredictable mood swings. Sakura rarely bothered him with her conflicts, though Kazuo was well aware of the times his daughter smiled and told him she was going to do her homework, when really she was huddling forlornly on her bed with her music turned up high. Those were the times when he wished she would just talk to him. But she never did. Either she refused to trouble him, or she was adamant to handle her problems on her own. Except Uzumaki Naruto was not Sakura. He was not Kazuo's child, demanded none of the man's responsibilities, and Kazuo was starting to question why he was bothered with a perfect stranger. It was a pointless waste of his day off. And yet Kazuo continued to sit there, watching a show he otherwise would not even look at twice. He waited. Eventually, just like he'd known would be the case, Uzumaki Naruto began to talk. Kazuo, do you have any ramen lying around? So they made instant ramen, took the cups back to the couch, and resumed their previous positions. The only difference was the steaming noodles and slurping sounds. Bored out of your mind yet? Kazuo asked between mouthfuls. I was wondering, what do you guys do around here? Damn, the kid ate quickly. That's a very general question, kid. Like? Naruto's face scrunched up. How do you live? Kazuo finished his cup and put it down on the coffee table. You asked the right man? When you inhale, oxygen is carried to your lungs and is circulated around your body, allowing dash. I didn't mean that. Naruto said exasperatedly when he saw where the explanation was going. It was the loudest he had been all morning. Kazuo saw improvement. Like most troubled minds, Naruto welcomed distraction. I mean, what should I be doing? The question was a strange one, and the grimace told Kazuo the boy had realized that as well. He raised the matter Sakura had brought to his attention earlier when he had asked her what she thought of Naruto. You should be in school, kid. Naruto's eyes widened by a fraction. I've finished school. Why do you think I'm just a kid? I can look after myself. His tone was defensive, though Kazuo could not for the life of him figure out why. Really now? Their eyes met. Yes. Kazuo crossed his arms. All right then. Walk out the door right now and go home. An assortment of emotions flashed through Naruto's eyes. Confusion, shock, pain, emotions too deep for an outgoing teenager. Sakura was mature, yes, but Kazuo received the impression that Uzumaki Naruto had been forced to grow a lot in a short amount of time. When the teenager finally spoke again, his voice was an indecisive whisper. Are you kicking me out? Kazuo supposed he could. He had done everything he was obliged to for someone he had met only days ago. No one could call him heartless if he let Naruto leave his household. The boy would have nothing more to do with him. Where would you go if I did? He questioned of his companion. Naruto frowned, suddenly finding his hands very interesting. He mumbled something incoherent. What was that? No. Louder, kid. I don't know. Naruto's voice broke with anguish. Kazuo had to restrain himself from flinching. This wasn't a child's tantrum, it was a man's agony. Silence descended between them, interrupted only by Naruto's heavy breathing. The blonde did not apologize for his outburst, nor did he appear to be angry. Instead, he was visibly mortified, as if he had just voiced something he hadn't been able to bring himself to believe. Naruto, are you in trouble with the law? Despite his distress, Naruto managed to look confused. Are you doing anything illegal? Kazuo reiterated. Blue eyes grew wide with alarm. No! Of course not! The very prospect obviously astonished him, making it hard for Kazuo to discern a lie. The man narrowed his eyes. You don't think you're being rather suspicious, kid? I pick you up off the street, you end up staying longer than intended, and now you're telling me you have nowhere to go. With each allegation, Naruto's head dropped a little, until all Kazuo could see was his ruffled hair. Just what is going on, Naruto? His audience was not eager to spill his guts, so Kazuo got up to dispose of their ramen cups. Uzumaki Naruto, the strangest kid he'd ever met. There was no stated obligation that he had to help him, yet Kazuo felt that he could not simply get rid of Naruto without first figuring out what was wrong. Although he could tell quite plainly that Naruto was not telling him even half of the truth, he didn't look like a good-for-nothing punk who constantly lied between his teeth. He'd said he had nowhere to go, and Kazuo found himself willingly believing him. Kazuo? Naruto raised his voice only a little so that the man could hear him. He hesitated for a moment, swallowing the silence. Are you sure you don't know of a place called Konoha? The Leaf Village? Now where had he heard that before? It seemed to be all the boy wanted to know, and considering the unnameable significance his response could bring, Kazuo sorted through his knowledge with care. But sometimes you couldn't help even if you wanted to. I'm sure. Never heard of it. What about Fire Country? Now Naruto sounded desperate, but his voice somehow dull at the same time. He had likely foreseen Kazuo's answer. No. Kazuo went back to his seat and flicked through the channels on the television. Distracted, he switched it off. It was the unhelpful doctor side of him that urged him to sympathize with Uzumaki Naruto. He was a man who saved others, who unconditionally treated all patients, regardless of race, gender, background, anything. From what he had heard from her, Sakura had had no problems with Naruto so far, except for his perverted ways, but she had the sense not to mention it to her father again. Being roughly the same age, the teenagers could relate more easily. Kazuo had the suspicion that, if Naruto ever felt like unloading on someone, it would be Sakura. He did not claim to understand teenagers outstandingly well, but Kazuo Haruno had once gone through that stage. Adults were the most reliable guardians and also your most powerful enemy. He had not a single doubt that Yamanaka Ino knew things about his daughter that Sakura had never been able to share with him. Kid! He had to nudge Naruto when the blonde did not answer. Kid, you're going to have to trust me. Naruto shrugged, his gesture succeeding only in making him look smaller. He was like a patient who refused to divulge how he had hurt himself. Kazuo could not diagnose an injury without sufficient understanding of the patient. He was tackled by a totally irrelevant question of the sort that he was beginning to expect from Naruto. Do ninjas exist, Kazuo? It was a child's question. Yet it was different to how 7-year-old Sakura had tugged at her father's hand and unpretentiously asked if Santa Claus was real. This was a child's question in solemn context. Kazuo calmly looked into the younger man's eyes and shook his head. Resolve sparked in the blue orbs, flickering with the weight of reality. However, instead of letting himself sag like a deflated balloon, Naruto squared his shoulders and raised his head. I guess life still has to go on, he announced to thin air. He turned back to Kazuo. Do you think I'm annoying? Yep. Naruto grinned. Do you think you could let me stay for longer? Kazuo crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. Now why would I do that? It's a lot to ask, you know. Yeah, I guess so. It sounded like he was aware of the immense favor he was requesting. I won't freeload off you, I swear. I'll find myself a job. And I'll pay you rent and that. You found your friend, have you? Naruto's brow furrowed. My? His face lit up, then darkened. Oh. Yeah, I found him all right. He wasn't very helpful. Huh. Please, Kazuo. I'll leave once I'm ready. Ready for what? I should try the lotto, Kazuo thought. Of all the other teenagers in the world that he could have taken pity on, it had to be Uzumaki Naruto. His colleagues and friends knew that he was not a soft man. That was the verdict. Kazuo Haruno didn't do anything wrong. In his line of profession, he couldn't afford to. But when it came to this grinning youth with his crushed disappointment, he just didn't know what was right or wrong. Wash the car. What? But through the hopeless confusion, Naruto's eyes were sparkling with hope. Kazuo sighed. He really was going soft. Until you get yourself a job, you're going to do anything I tell you. And I'm telling you to wash the car. Naruto's face split into a grateful beam. Yes, sir. Then he seemed to remember something. Hey, when does Sakura get off school? Kazuo glanced at the clock. An hour and a bit. At 3. Why? She told me to pick her up after school every day. The teen was scratching his head. Interesting. Sakura hadn't told him that, but knowing his daughter, she would not fail to leave out anything of importance. You're too gullible, kid. She probably didn't mean it. Why not? He frowned. He seemed to realize exactly why at that moment, and his eyes softened. Well, that's even more reason I should go. How do you get to her school? Got a map? Noticing Kazuo's skeptical look, he added defensively. I can read one. Arrow, a friend made sure I knew. The sadness returned to his eyes, but only for a second before it was banished, leaving only faint traces of pain. Kazuo sighed. There's one in my room. Bedside table, second drawer. Bring it down, I'll show you. The kid was up in a blur, evidently nimble on his feet. He was halfway up the staircase when Kazuo heard him stop. Kazuo, how do you wash a car? He really was starting to wonder if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Come on, Sakura, are we friends or what? Sakura zipped up her satchel bag and rolled her eyes as she headed for the door. The question was so overused, so commonly tossed out, that she couldn't even take it seriously anymore. If only she had known the weight it had borne that time Ino had asked her in 6th grade. If only. But everything was all right now, and if their renewed friendship of 3 years meant anything, it would take more than a simple no to rid Sakura of Yamanaka Ino. I don't see what's so interesting about him, she replied dismissively. He's just another guy, that's all. Another guy? Just another guy? Ino was dismayed. He drops into your life out of nowhere and suddenly he's staying at your house until God knows when. You're not concerned at all? They paused to greet the janitor, but almost as soon as the man had passed, Ino pressed on. Rhetorical questions, you have to love them, Sakura thought. Forehead, he's been in your room. No other guy has been in your room before except Ken. Sakura didn't need her so-called womanly instincts to presume that Ino was not going to leave her alone without an answer in some form. She sighed. 1. Ino, it was a big deal at first, but now it isn't. There is nothing special about him. 2. I did not let him in, he climbed in through the window. 3. She said, and was suddenly very grateful that she had mastered the poker face. Ken's been waltzing into my room since we were 5. He doesn't count. So there. Oh, so Ken doesn't count, does he? Ino said slyly, switching track. What would he think if he found out about your roommate, HM? Too late, she realized what she had said and her face contorted in chagrin. Sakura. The pink-haired girl turned away, her eyes clouded. What? I'm fine. We're just friends, you know that. Yes, but dash. Ino, I'm fine. Her companion interjected firmly, looking straight ahead. Ino pressed her lips together, and Sakura took no notice of her friend's sympathetic glance, which was usually as scarce as an F in her report card. In fact, she didn't even register that Ino was tugging at her arm until the blonde girl saw the need to step on her foot. That pulled her out of her reverie. "Hey!" Her accusation fell on deaf ears. Sakura's arm jolted in its joint as Ino's jerks increased feverishly. 2 o'clock. Now. The front courtyard was almost drained of students. Sakura instinctively turned toward the bus stop, only to find that the usual flock of impatient teenagers was not crowded around it. She must have missed the early bus, and the next bus was half an hour away. Great, I have to walk, she thought morosely. Of course, Ino gave her no time to wallow in self-pity. Not that way, forehead! There! Although she was facing Sakura with an excited look on her face, her finger was pointed in a completely different direction. So much for subtlety. Shaking her head, Sakura looked over her friend's shoulder. That orange Hawaiian shirt looks so familiar. You can't be serious, Sakura muttered, her eyes growing wide. Well, no, terrible fashion sense doesn't really appeal to me. It looks like he's waiting for someone anyway. I wonder who it is, he looks really fit. The person of interest turned around at that moment, looking up from his shoes. He caught sight of Ino's pointed finger and consequently Sakura. His face lit up. Hey, there you are! She stared incredulously as he approached. You actually came? Uzumaki Naruto's hand habitually went behind his head. Your school isn't that bad looking, he commented. Ino had watched the exchange with a slack jaw, and now she settled her gaze in Sakura. That's him? That's him, Sakura confirmed slowly, not taking her eyes off the newcomer. Naruto looked confused. Hi. Hi, Ino said, but got no further, as Sakura had already stepped in front of her. I wasn't serious about you picking me up, she told him in a low voice. His gaze was so intense that Sakura almost shivered. I know. But I said I'd come and I always keep my word. You don't have to. How did you get here anyway? She hadn't bargained on Naruto actually finding his way to her school. He seemed like the sort of guy who would take the arrangement seriously, but she had thought he would either forget or eventually discover that he could not possibly pinpoint where the school was. And yet here he was, all 6 feet of stranger. Kazuo gave me a map. And he also told me the same thing. What? That you didn't mean it seriously. So her father had been the culprit. Sakura was not aware that it was his day off. She hardly ever was. Her father's work hours were subjective to change, and she had long since ceased her attempts to see a pattern. Ino was smirking at Naruto. Hey there, loverba. I'm Ino. Hi. I'm Naruto. Then he blinked. Loverba? Groaning, Sakura grabbed Ino by the shoulders and marched her a distance away. Excuse us for a minute, she called back to Naruto. Ino twisted away when they were practically pressed up against the gate. What are you doing? Don't tell me you're interested, Sakura hissed. Oh, chill, forehead, Ino soothed, her smile mischievous. I can see that Loverba's got his eyes on you. Getting cozy already? Her cheeks traitorously turning red, Sakura glowered at her companion. I don't even know him that well, Ino. I'm not suddenly going to fall head over heels for him. What sort of girl do you think I am? Ino opened her mouth, but Sakura cut through her. And no, I won't fall for him. He'll be leaving soon. The furthest he's going to get is a friend, maybe a good friend, but just a friend. You got that? He came just to pick you up, the blonde pointed out. Like a good boyfriend should. Is everything okay? Naruto's voice made Sakura jump, holding her back from strangling Ino. She whipped around. Christ, he walked without a sound. Judging from her uncontrollable outburst of giggles, Ino had seen him coming. She was in so much trouble. Everything's dandy, Ino chirped, wrestling herself free of Sakura's riled grasp. Oh, quit it, Sakura. I know you two want to be left alone. I'll go now, happy? You do know that I am going to kill you tomorrow, right? Sakura ground out, eyes narrowed. Ino smiled sweetly, bade Naruto a suspiciously civil goodbye, and left humming a popular tune. Sakura was well accustomed to her friend's moods, and she could tell that Ino was, as she claimed, uninterested in Naruto. No, that little spring in her step was giddy triumph. It usually meant a lot of text messages. What's that? Naruto questioned when she fished her mobile phone out of her bag and switched it off. Glancing at him, she held it out. It's a phone. Mobile, cell, portable phone? She had noticed that Naruto was clueless about a lot of things. Remembering his reaction to them all, Sakura wondered where he had come from. He was a strange person, shrouded in ambiguity. How much could she learn about him before he left them? She started walking with that thought in mind. and was promptly yanked back to the present when Naruto gave a yelp and abruptly vaulted face first into the pavement. She stopped with a surprised gasp. Naruto? Kneeling down beside him, she quickly looked over for injuries. None. She breathed out a sigh and absently brushed dirt off his shoulders. Why are you so clumsy? He was disgruntled and red in the face. It's not my fault, he proclaimed indignantly. These stupid things keep making me trip. He kicked up a leg and Sakura caught a flash of gray. I want my sandals back. How are you supposed to walk in these? Oh, it was his shoe. She could see the problem. Naruto, you need to tie the shoelaces. The what? She eyed him, questioning if this was a farce. She doubted it. You're not telling me you walked all the way here, are you? But I did. With untied shoelaces? I think so. Sakura pointed down at her father's old sneakers. Shoelaces. They hold the shoe tighter together? When Naruto failed to comprehend, she took off her bag, pressed it into his arms, and crouched down to tie up one of his shoes. Like this. Oh hey. His tone was that of amazement. That feels loads better. How did you do that? Sakura slapped a hand to her face. That led to a hopeless explanation of which nothing seemed to make sense to Naruto. He failed dismally when Sakura tried to teach him. It was like teaching a child. Even her younger cousins had never had trouble with shoelaces. This guy was a walking catastrophe. Almost 10 minutes later, Sakura threw up her hands and swatted Naruto's hands away so she could tie up his remaining shoe herself. There! She huffed, patience worn thin. Her irritation ebbed away when Naruto's shoulders sagged a little, and she all of a sudden didn't feel very accomplished. How about I teach you when we get back? She offered. That seemed to cheer him up a little. For some reason Sakura felt that Naruto was not nearly as enthusiastic as he had been the first couple of days of his stay. He had been gloomy since, only yesterday, actually. Although he appeared to have found his way to Sakura's school with the help of a map, Naruto seemed to have close to no idea how to get back. She took note of this with an amused smile. It was not until they had crossed the road that she realized Naruto still had her bag. However, when she asked for it, he stubbornly shook his head. It's why I came, he said. Something told her that arguing would bear no fruits of success. I'm glad you're man enough to carry a pink bag then. She shrugged. This had obviously not occurred to him, and Naruto turned away, embarrassed. Sakura stifled a giggle, keeping a straight face. You don't have to come anymore, Naruto. I'm happy you did, but I wasn't expecting you to. It's alright, you know. The road tapered away to make way for the harbor. Naruto turned his head towards the expanse of water. I know you said it only to make me feel better. As denying it would only dig herself into a deeper hole, Sakura kept silent. She frankly did not know what had compelled her to do such a thing. She did not see herself as an unconditionally generous person. It was simply one of the many things a person could say but not mean. Only Uzumaki Naruto would interpret them literally. His appearance did touch her a little, though. He cared enough to remember and carry out his promise. Not everyone could do that. He turned his head to give her a small smile. I'll wait for you at the gates every day. And that was that. While Sakura digested it, Naruto had already breached a new topic. I'll be staying with you for a little longer. Kazuo said it was fine. She was not nearly as perturbed as she should be. Maybe Ino did have a point. There was just something about Uzumaki Naruto that made him seem harmless. It was hard not to accept him. Her wordlessness alerted him. You don't like that? He frowned. No, I'm fine with it. Really, she assured. I was just thinking. Maybe Dad and I can clear out the study for you. We don't use it much. Do you think that would work? Yeah. Thanks. He smiled gratefully, but it disappeared quickly at Sakura's next question. Say, why can't you go home? She knew immediately that she had said something wrong. Naruto stopped, hand rested on the railing, and looked out at the port longingly. His eyes shimmered with the water's reflection. I just can't, he settled to say after a while. Sakura nodded slowly. Her mind conjured up various possibilities of what could prevent Naruto from returning to his home. Several stood out in sharp contrast, but in this case only one shone with the highest likelihood. She was hesitant to confirm it with him. It was wrong to, of all things, be curious of someone's pain. But she wanted to understand. Although Uzumaki Naruto was not much more than an acquaintance, she wanted to help him. At least, she hoped she could cheer him up a little. It was disheartening to see him saddened. She wanted his grins to reach his eyes and shine with genuine joy. At the end of the day, Sakura just wanted the people around her to be happy. You came from another country, didn't you? Guess you could say that. Is it In the middle of a war? She bit her lip. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea after all. Naruto's eyes sharpened. The hand gripping the iron rail tightened, the skin stretching across his hard knuckles. Then it loosened. I guess you could say that too, he murmured. He flashed a weak grin at her. You're pretty smart to hit the nail on the head. I bet you do well at school. What about you? She asked. Eh? Did you do well at school? He chuckled, shoulders trembling. Nope. I was dead last. Oh. Feeling awkward, Sakura turned her attention to the port. I like coming here. It's nice. Naruto agreed, but his voice was quiet. This would not do. Sakura looked around. Her eyes settled on a nearby ice cream stand. Give me my bag for a second, Naruto. She went through the pockets for her wallet and smiled at him. Wait here. She could feel his eyes on her back as she walked up to the stand. Again, she questioned why she was going through this for someone she hardly knew. She wouldn't be like this with another stranger she knew. But then, not every stranger on the street unwelcomely climbed through her window. Despite the short time they had known each other, it already felt like she had been through an impressive ordeal with Uzumaki Naruto. It was extraordinary. Brushing off her musing, Sakura returned to her companion with an ice cream in each hand. Naruto was smiling slightly. Chocolate or vanilla? He went for the chocolate. She handed it to him, and in doing so noticed that her bag was now slung over his shoulder. Orange and pink clashed spectacularly, and she admired the sight. Naruto was giving his ice cream a funny look, staring intently at it. Frowning, Sakura asked, Don't you like ice cream? He shook his head and told her that, no, he did, he loved it. Then what's the problem? He didn't know. Well then. She accidentally bumped his elbow, causing the top of his ice cream to smear over his mouth. She grinned. Eat up. He looked at her in astonishment. I can't believe you just did that. Why not? Naruto seemed to bring out her playful side. It had been a while since Sakura had, well, played a trick on someone. Because dash. He deliberately nudged her arm. It's supposed to be my job. Sakura sputtered. A child, holding his mother's hand as they passed, giggled at the mess on the teenagers' faces. She glowered unhappily at Naruto, succeeding only in amusing him. He guffawed through his ice cream. Oh, that's cute! And he burst out laughing, taking her aback. He almost sounded cheerful again. And all I had to do was humiliate myself, she thought. Sakura unraveled the serviette around her ice cream cone and used it to wipe her mouth, but Naruto opted to methodically clean his face with his tongue. The occasional chuckle and snort escaped him. I can't believe you just did that. She scowled, and of course, that only made him double over with renewed laughter. He continued until all he could manage was breathless gasps. Feeling better? She asked, swiftly averting her gaze so he could not see the relief sparkling in them. He grinned. A little bit, yeah? Only a little? Okay, fine, a lot. Naruto leaned out on the railing and licked his ice cream. Sakura joined him. I'm a survivor, he said shortly. She didn't understand the sudden confession, but she nodded regardless. Do you think I'm weird, Sakura? Another nod. What about special? Yes. A crunching sound broke into the air as Naruto bit into his waffle cone. Yeah. I think I'm special too. They ate silently until they had finished their ice creams. Sakura crumpled her serviette into a tight ball. Her mouth opened, but when no words came out, she closed it again. Naruto glanced questioningly at her. She caught his eye and shook her head. He shrugged. Let's go home, she said. But Naruto did not move. You want to stay? A cargo ship chugged lazily across the horizon. Naruto's eyes followed it. I want to do something, Sakura. Almost immediately, alarms went off in her head. This guy was not afraid of anything. There was no telling what he would do. She watched as he slipped the strap of her bag over his head and held it out to her. Warily, she took it. I hope he's not going to jump into the water. She stood back as Naruto cupped his hands to his mouth. She was not the only one paying attention. An elderly couple sitting on the bench behind had raised their heads. Sakura began to fidget with her bag's clasp. A hoarse yell shattered her anxiety. It was wordless, it was loud, and it was infused with pain. It was coming from Naruto. Everyone in the vicinity stopped to turn their heads toward the source of the noise. Sakura winced as Naruto's voice cracked. She stepped forward, intending to haul him away by force, but then it struck her that she shouldn't interrupt. If she truly wanted to help this stranger, she should let him vent. He needed to. And she had to let him, even if it meant becoming the new item of social ogling. He sounded so sad. Agony ripped through the cords, slamming against a solid wall of hopelessness. The old lady on the bench tapped Sakura's hand and asked if her friend was all right. The girl told her she didn't know, because, really, she didn't. When, at last, Naruto ran out of breath, he let his head fall back with an exhausted sigh. Then he turned back to Sakura, gave her to the brightest grin she had seen all week, and reclaimed possession of her bag. She fell into step beside him, failing to summon the heart to tell him that they were going the long way. "That felt good," he said cheerfully, slinging the pink bag over his shoulder. It took several seconds for Sakura to find her voice. "You're crying." His cheeks were shining and so were his eyes. He dashed his hand across his eyes. "Sand, that's all it is. Don't you get sand in your eyes too?" The sun was just beginning to set, and as Sakura shielded her eyes against the bright glare, all she could think of was that Ino was not going to hear about this. "Wash your face," Sakura had said, and somehow that had resulted in a shower. An hour-long shower. That Naruto had yet to get out of. As was unexpectedly common, he was thinking again. It felt almost like an excuse now. But he wasn't trying to avoid anything, not anymore. It was futile to lapse into denial. The facts were that his life had just belly flopped into the gates of hell. Living hell. But he could do something about that, couldn't he? Naruto himself was the most optimistic person he knew, and frankly, how long could he keep up this depressing outlook? Most importantly, he was not entirely alone. It was no privilege that he had been taken in by Kazuo and Sakura Haruno. It was a gift, a chance, whatever good things were called. The shower had gushed out warm water that plastered his hair to his head. Naruto gingerly sniffed at Sakura's shampoo before squeezing some to his hand. As he worked it into his locks, he was glad that Kiba was not present to tactfully tell him that he smelled like a girl. He liked to think that his friend was still with him, though. His partnering days with the Inuzuka had been memorable. "We don't do normal," Kiba used to say, usually in retort to an NBU's suggestion that an ambush be handled the normal, standardized way. Naruto was now as close to normal as he could possibly get. If he had any complaints, it would be that this place was too normal. All his life, Uzumaki Naruto had simply longed to be normal, to be pardoned of the blood-lusting demon sealed in his navel. Now, he was staring normal in the face. Except this was not how he had imagined it to be. When he had let it all out at the harbor, his cry had not been of his dream to become Hokage, or a vow to prove himself to the world. He'd let his throat run sore until every drop of melancholy had spilled out. Sakura wanted him to be happy. He wanted to be happy. Somehow, he had to manage. But he needed a purpose that was not the Kyuubi's rough demand to live. Water slinked over his bare shoulders, trickling down his back, rolling down his front. Naruto breathed deeply and closed his eyes. His chakra was gradually returning to him, and although his reserves were not even halfway filled, he had enough to circulate through his system. He sensed disturbance rippling as he did so, and frowned. His eyes were closed, but his consciousness abruptly seemed darker. Snapping his eyes open, he half expected to see the tall gates and the Kyuubi's crimson eyes behind them. All that greeted him was his hazy reflection in the glass, distorted by steam. "Damn it," Naruto muttered. The fox was taking every advantage of the weakened seal. Despite knowing this, he had to see for himself. He looked down at his stomach. The visible seal was cracked, the dark marks invaded by jagged tears. Jiraiya would be distraught by the ruination of what he would call a masterpiece. Naruto's will was the main force supporting the crumbling seal. His will of fire, Old Man Hokage often said. The aged man had also urged all Leaf Nin to keep their will of fire burning strongly. Naruto was now painfully aware of the wise teachings he had been denied when Sarutobi had passed away. A dull knock on the door drew his attention. "Naruto? Are you all right in there?" Sakura called. Yeah? Be out in a minute. I'll leave a towel here for you, okay?" Now, where was I? Oh, right. Naruto ducked his head under the water and rinsed the shampoo out of his hair. He had figured it out. He was going to assign himself one last mission as a shinobi, to restrain the Kyuubi from unleashing its wrath on the people of this time. Kazuo, Sakura, strangers he didn't even know. He would protect them by keeping the world's worst nightmare at bay. "I'm going to be a hero." Naruto nodded as he turned off the water. "Believe it." Chapter 4. Where'd you go? If she wouldn't be burdened with the responsibility of finding a replacement, Sakura would have thrown her alarm clock out the window by now. What in the world was it doing, going off at, what was it? 6:30 in the morning? Once she had silenced it with an overly harsh slap, she lay back and tried to remember if there was anything special going on today. There were no excursions, no tests to study for, no Ino to pester her. Why had she set her alarm an hour earlier than usual? There was a light knock on her bedroom door, and Sakura turned her head to see her father stepping inside. She sat up, still hugging the plush toy she had gone to bed with. "Dad?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Kazuo chuckled. It was rare for him to catch his daughter during one of her more juvenile moments. There were times when it slipped his mind that Sakura was still a teenager, a child like any other. "Good morning." There was no point trying to fall back asleep. Sakura gave her clock an unhappy glare and rolled off her bed. The first thing that caught her attention when she looked over at Kazuo was his tie. Her father was not a tie person. "What's this for?" she asked. Absently, she eased his hands away and began to correct his poor attempt. "I have a conference to attend." "Oh yeah, you mentioned something like that." Sakura paused to yawn behind her hand. "It's weird. I set my alarm early but I can't remember why." Kazuo gave a light chuckle. "Are you sure?" She raised her head to look quizzically at him. In the short moment of silence, they both heard a loud snore emanate from down the hallway, and Sakura sighed, remembering. "I'd better go wake him up, shouldn't I?" But Kazuo did not move from the door, and she knew he had something to say. "Dad?" When he saw that he had her attention, he moved over to observe his reflection in her mirror. "What do you think of Naruto?" Sakura shrugged. "I don't mind him." She knew her answer would not satisfy her father, so she added. "He makes the house livelier." It was a nice change to have someone who could keep the empty silence at bay. Although she didn't particularly mind, it could get horribly lonely when her father was away. "I like the kid too. He takes care of you." That made her laugh. Naruto take care of her? No, that didn't click. "You don't think so?" She just gave him a look. Instead of trying to persuade her to see his view, Kazuo simply stated, "Well, I think so." And that was when Sakura understood that Uzumaki Naruto had somehow passed the test. Her father rarely complimented someone like that. "Do you have something to say, Dad?" Being up front came easily to her. He regarded her from the corner of his eye. "That kid worries me. He's some sort of lost sheep. If you don't keep an eye on him, you're going to find him stuck in a rubbish bin or something." He paused. "I'm going to ask you to look out for him, Sakura. And if you can, I'd like you to learn more about him. He's not telling me anything and I can't help him if I don't know what's going on." His words stunned Sakura. She had never heard her father request such a thing. It was offhand, but she sensed the underlying concern he held for Naruto. He was going so far for someone he had only known for a week and a half. "You didn't have to ask, you know," she said, meeting his gaze. "But I don't dash. I'm a father, believe it or not. I have a daughter who is the same age as that stranger in the next room. It's hard to walk away." Kazuo smiled at Sakura's befuddled expression. "You were going to ask me why I'm doing this, weren't you?" He didn't wait for her response before making his way to the door, stopping to pat her head. "I'll be out late, so don't wait up." She was about to open her mouth to indignantly inform him that she did not wait up, but he had already brushed past her and crossed the hallway. All Sakura could do was tenderly touch the spot her father had fondled, and smile. "What am I, a little girl who still likes clinging to her father?" she wondered ruefully. The answer was yes, but she'd be damned if anyone would ever hear it from her. Shaking her head, Sakura padded out of her room and knocked on the door to her immediate right. "Naruto, I'm coming in," she called, though she already knew that he would not have heard her. She had taken exactly 2 steps into the room when she unexpectedly stubbed her toe on something hard and fell into a shallow pile of Naruto-smelling clothes. "Naruto!" The heap of snoring knucklehead immediately came alive in a disarray of gangly limbs and blankets. Naruto winced as his ears rang, and positively cringed when he saw Sakura waist-deep in the clothes he had neglected to fold. "And morning," he grinned weakly. Sakura ground her teeth together in an effort to hold back the tirade of commands she had already started conjugating in her head. Transforming what had been an organized and pristine study into a laundry basket was something only Naruto was capable of, and while he had only boarded in the room for 3 days it already reeked of his character. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Huffing, she pulled herself off the ground and, brushing herself off, sternly pointed a finger to the doorway behind her. "Breakfast. Now." He quickly snapped into an uncoordinated salute despite his drowsiness, and hurried out. Sakura wondered if he even had any idea why she had woken him so early. He tended to forget things easily, even if she had reminded him only last night. She grumbled and picked his clothes off the floor, dumping them onto the desk so she could fold them. How someone could make such a mess out of less than 10 garments, she could not even fathom. She could already hear clanging from downstairs when she returned to her room to change into her uniform. The noise reminded her that, really, she should be the one preparing breakfast. She was quite sure that she did not drop pots on her feet and experiment cereal with ice cream. Moreover, Naruto was still the guest, no matter how familiar she was with him. Sakura wouldn't have asked such a thing of him if he hadn't proposed the offer beforehand. "You gotta let me do something around here, Sakura," he had said 2 days ago, when they had been squabbling over who should put the clothes out. "The deal was that I'd help out, remember? Just sit back and relax. I promise I'll make myself useful." And that said, he had turned around and promptly knocked over the basket of pegs. It was weird, somehow, to let someone else do the work for her. Since she had been 10 years old, she had been taking care of the house, and arguably, her father. Sakura was not accustomed to a blonde teenager bumbling around in her kitchen, making food for her. Too bad she couldn't do anything about it. Her new friend was as stubborn as a haggling Ino. Naruto was still working away at the counter when she went downstairs, but she spied a platter of sushi on the table. "Is this your first time making makizushi rolls?" Sakura wanted to know. Bits of rice and carrot fell out of the piece she had picked up. She hurriedly popped it in her mouth. "I bet they'd look prettier if you guys had a bamboo mat," he defended. He was pressing another roll together with his bare hands, feasting on the ingredients that spilled out. His keen senses detected an incoming projectile, and Naruto spun around to catch the rolled-up package. "You were saying?" Sakura swallowed her admiration of her companion's reflexes. She had no idea that he could move like that. He blinked at the bamboo mat in his hand. "Who said I didn't know where it was?" His bluff was not convincing at all. Sakura rolled her eyes. "I'm serious," he insisted. "Sure, Naruto." Sakura made a dismissive motion with her hand. She turned away briefly, but Naruto still managed to see her stifle a yawn. Suddenly humbled, he quietly slid the mat under the sushi and went back to work. The sound of running water had him turning around again. "You know, I was going to wash up afterwards," he said, frowning. He had no idea where she had unearthed that jam-smeared plate from, but he did register that she was rinsing it out. His sushi, however, lay lonesome on the table. He dropped everything and pulled her away from the sink just as she reached for Kazuo's coffee-stained mug. "Eat," he said arrestingly, steering her back to breakfast. She obediently lowered herself into the nearest chair and pulled the plate closer. "Good girl," Naruto approved before returning to his task. If there was one thing he had noticed during his stay, it was that the girl was a natural housewife. Which was the problem here. "And drink this too." He plopped a glass down in front of her. She eyed it dubiously, turning a skeptical eye on him. "Sushi and milk? Seriously?" she questioned. "Sure, why not?" He chucked a piece of sushi into his mouth and followed it up with a long gulp of milk straight from the carton. He bowed majestically after he had swallowed, flourishing his hand as if he had just digested a sword. Sakura clapped amusedly. She was too used to him. It felt like she had known him for a lot longer than a few weeks. He was a welcome companion. She finally had someone she could beat at chess. "Aren't you having any?" she asked once she had finished her meal. "I was eating the stuff that fell out. There was a lot." Naruto belched out a fake burp. Sakura tried unsuccessfully to keep a straight face. "So what are you making then?" "More rolls, can't you see?" "Mao, don't make too much. We're not going to be able to finish them." Then she saw him pack them into a small pink box. Sakura tilted her head thoughtfully. "That box." Naruto closed the lid firmly. "That's why you eat them for lunch. Aren't I smart? I found this in the cupboard." He was quite pleased with his ingenuity. The bamboo mat was in the cupboard too, Sakura had half a mind to point out, but she found that she couldn't take her eyes off the bento box that had been pressed into her hands. Naruto ducked his head down to look at her face. "Something wrong?" "I haven't used this lunchbox since 3rd grade." She ended up mumbling, grimacing at how ungrateful she sounded. That wasn't what she had meant to say. So this was what it was like to have the roles reversed. No wonder Naruto was so strangely touched whenever she habitually tried to mother him. Naruto looked curiously at Sakura. She sounded a little weird. He didn't see the big deal. He'd often been bullied into making Erosenen's lunch. It seemed different to Sakura though. He didn't think his sushi looked that appalling. But come to think of it, he had been in her shoes before. He brought a hand up to rub his cheek. "Well, you're welcome," he said uncertainly, picking interestedly at a scrap of seaweed clinging to the palm of his hand. Remembering where she was, Sakura raised her head and nodded. "Yeah, thanks, Naruto." She realized she sounded a little flippant, and smiled warmly. He beamed back. It was a little awkward, how they were caught up by a simple lunch. So what if she had been making her own sandwiches since 1st grade? She shook her head. "It's about time to leave. I'll go pack my bag." With that, she escaped upstairs before anything more could be said. God. I like the kid too. He takes care of you. Sakura kneaded her forehead. Ino was going to laugh till she was purple. And that's exactly why I'm not going to tell her, she decided as she stuffed her pencil case into her satchel. That was something to add to the list of things she had kept from Ino, along with that day at the harbor. If she thought the scene in the kitchen had been odd, she didn't have the words to describe Naruto's attitude that day. Well, he's just special, she said aloud. She almost snorted at her own words. Special didn't quite cover it. He'd gone as far as to make her lunch, honestly. She was a tad bit annoyed with herself when she glanced up at the mirror and saw a mellow glimmer of elation in her eyes. Sparing a couple of seconds to make sure that she had packed the right books, and carefully stored her bento box in the safest compartment, Sakura made her way back downstairs, and immediately spotted Naruto crouched by the door. Ready to go? In a Minu, damn it! Naruto ground his teeth, shooting his sneakers a spiteful glare. Which idiot had invented these shuwatsits? Something starting with L, licks, that had to be it. Shulicks. It definitely felt like he was trying to tie a tongue into a knot. Sakura, he pleaded, catching her in the middle of combing her hair. Are you ready yet? It's already 7 and we still have to walk to Ino's. She vigorously attacked a knot in her tresses. I need help with my shulicks. She stopped mid-brush. Your what? He lifted a sneaker-clad foot, appealing to her with his eyes. She wrinkled her nose at the declining state he had already reduced it to. A voice somewhere in the back of her mind constantly reminded her that she had dedicated an entire 2 hours teaching him how to tie shoelaces. She should have drilled the correct term into his memory while she was at it. She was about to reprimand him for forgetting so easily, but noticed his furrowed brow and slightly agitated movements. After some thought, she closed her mouth and moved forward to help him. As usual, Naruto bounded ahead to press the button for the traffic light while Sakura locked the front door. He was like an overgrown child. Seeing someone as energetic as him was refreshing in some sort of ambiguous sense. It made her feel lighter somehow. She joined him. We'll go straight and then turn right at the second street. Make sure you remember as we go. You're not coming? The troubled tenor in his voice hastened her response. No, I'm coming with you. But you still have to learn the way for yourself. What if I can't come one day? Oh. Haha, I didn't think of that. Naruto gazed distantly at the blinking light of the red pedestrian figure across the road and wondered if he was thinking too selfishly. Of course Sakura couldn't always be with him. He couldn't stay with the Harunos forever. Overdependence was a bad thing, he'd learned. There was a big world out there and sooner or later he'd have to face it on his own. He'd lost faith in wishful thinking. Ah, there we go. Sakura's already walking off without me. Mao, don't just stand there, Naruto. The light's already changing. He blinked stupidly at her. Standing in the middle of the crossing, Sakura huffed and quickly backtracked. She grabbed his hand and tugged him onto the road. Wake up, Baka. Do I really have to do everything for you? Sorry. I'll pay more attention next time. Next time? She demanded, her voice lowering as she gave the drivers an apologetic wave. Did you grow paranoid of cars because of my dad or something? Probably not just because of Kazuo, but yeah, sort of. Naruto admitted, surprising both of them. I'm okay with crossing the road though, he added quickly. He didn't want Sakura to think that he was a wimp. If you say so. She smiled hesitantly. She should have been easier on him. Naruto was from a conflicted country after all. A slight pressure at her hand snapped her chain of thought, and Sakura suddenly remembered that she was still holding Naruto's hand. She was about to pull away when he spoke. I saw a mother hold her kid's hand while they crossed the road the other day. It's normal for mothers to do that, isn't it? Didn't your mom do that too? Intuition kicked in too late to censor the insensitive question, and Sakura looked up to see a wistful smile on Naruto's face. There was no anger or sorrow radiating from him, but she still quietly murmured an apology. Shrugging, he gave her a small smile, saying nothing. All at once she knew that he didn't want to talk about it, and understood that he was not upset. Sakura returned his smile and squeezed his hand. I'm not your mother, she said slowly, but I can walk with you. To make sure I don't get lost? He joked. Why else? That stings. Naruto pretended to nurse his heart. But hey, thanks for coming with me, Sakura. I know you're tired. He smiled down at her. And thanks for finding me a job. I don't know what I would have done without you. His gratitude was so sincere that she almost did a double take. Sakura gave a half-nervous laugh and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Well, I do. Huh! You would have ended up head first in a bin. Yo! Having grown accustomed to overloud voices, Sakura barely flinched when Ino flopped onto the bench beside her with a grin, pajamas and all. Yo! Someone's in a good mood. Well, you see, I got a full 9 hours of beauty sleep, unlike someone. Thanks for the sympathy. You're most welcome. I'm mortified. Of course not, sir! Disrupted them, and Sakura grimaced. Earlier, Naruto had been dragged off to be interrogated by Inoichi Yamanaka. Naruto was red-faced, suggesting that the majority of the content seemed to have very little to do with workplace agreements. Want some? Sakura lifted her head off Ino's shoulder and peered into the can her friend was waggling in front of her face. What is it? Ino paused to read the label. Iced coffee. It was soon snatched out of her hand. Mine! Ino looked around her parents' shop while Sakura practically inhaled the beverage. The girl could live off the stuff, seriously. They've been at it ever since you arrived. She nodded in Naruto's direction. Are you sure you don't want to go rescue your boyfriend, Sakura? The answer did not come until half a minute later, accompanied by an empty can. For starters, your dad wouldn't have so much to say if you hadn't pounced on Naruto and given him the wrong impression. Sakura shuddered just by recalling how hard Naruto had hit the pavement when Ino had thrown herself at him the moment he had set foot into the store. And for God's sake, he's not my boyfriend, pig! Not jealous at all, I see. Ino sounded disappointed. I don't get why you're not interested, he's quite compact. Sakura turned. Compact? She echoed. And quite the gentleman, too. He held me up when we were falling. Ino went on. Her eyes had a distinct sparkle to them, immediately setting alarms thundering through Sakura's lethargy. I thought you said you weren't interested, you pig! Oh, getting defensive, are we? Looks like we're getting somewhere. Sakura let out a sigh. For someone whose social life was a near flirting marathon, Ino seemed peculiarly keen to set her friend's sights on the new guy. Lay it off. I just don't want you playing him around. You know. Ino's thoughtful tone gave Sakura the impression that she was being surveyed. You're quite protective of him. The offhand comment threw her off. Sakura found herself staring at her blonde friend with wide eyes. Then she found her bearings and shrugged facetiously. Dad told me to look after him, she replied steadily. Ino narrowed her eyes. You look after too many things, Sakura. She stood. Come upstairs with me. We've got a good half an hour before we have to leave for school. I'll show you the new straightener I got. Sakura traipsed after her, eyeing the mane of long blonde hair. You don't need a straightener, Ino. Sure I do. You're the one who doesn't need it. Ino poked her head into the kitchen. Her family had been living above their flower shop for as long as Sakura could remember. Hey Mum! Look who's here! Ino's mother was a slender woman, and it was easy to see whose features her daughter took after. She was much less outspoken though. Sakura had known her since preschool and loved her for everything she was. Hana had even attended the parent-teacher interviews on the nights that Kazuo hadn't been able to make it. Sakura modeled every good mother after her. Hana looked up from the oven, her face brightening. Welcome home, Sakura, she said and smiled. It was a running joke. Sakura had camped over at the Yamanaka's so many times that it was practically her second home. Sakura bought Loverba over, said Ino. It's Naruto, her friend corrected. Your boyfriend, Sakura? Unlike her husband, Hana was much more outgoing. She would come down like thunder if her daughter stepped out of line, but most of the time she willingly listened to her daughter's galling descriptions of every mentionable boy she had met throughout the day. Sakura's face burned. Ino was one thing, her mother was something else. When Hana said it, it was actually embarrassing. No! He's not, Naruto is. Both Yamanakas laughed. Breathe, forehead, Ino sniggered. After enduring slow, agonizing minutes of torment, Sakura was finally permitted to escape to Ino's room and collapse on the bright mattress. Although she had buried her face in the blanket, the familiar footsteps informed her that Ino had pursued her prey. Sakura turned her head. You're evil, she said accusingly, eyes slits. Both of you. Hey, it's not my fault you react so hilariously to stuff like that. Only to your mother, she insisted adamantly. Ino rolled her eyes teasingly. What's the difference? She sat down on the edge of the bed. It took almost an entire minute of silence for Sakura to look up and realize that she was being studied with thoughtful eyes. What? She sighed. You're not over it. It? But Sakura knew exactly what her friend was talking about. They'd gone through this many times. Him. Ino needlessly elaborated. I am too. Then why aren't you considering other guys? What happened to showing me the straightener? Oh dear, aren't you straight, Sakura? Of course I dash. She caught herself at the last moment. That was so lame, you should be ashamed. But that had cracked the ice. Ino gave a short laugh and finally turned her demanding gaze away. It was unnerving looking into Ino's eyes. After too long it felt like they were no longer looking at you, but through you. Naruto had the same effect as well, Sakura mused. Shaking her head, she fell back down. She didn't remember when she had sat up in the rigid pose she had held for the past half-minute. That was uncalled for. Was it? Ino was changing into her uniform. I thought you would have seen it coming. Sakura sat up again. Now things made a lot more sense. Please don't tell me you were really trying to set me up with Naruto. She just received a cheeky, unabashed grin. Ino! I can't believe you! What? He's cute enough. A thread of seriousness snaked into Ino's tone. He'd be good for you, Sakura. You should start socializing again. When Ino got serious, she really was serious. Sakura knew she had to deter her friend before any more of her social life was picked apart. Ino, it's been over 3 months. Do I look like the type to mope around for that long? She knew that Ino only put up the judgmental expression to rile her, but she couldn't stop herself from being baited. No, the other girl said after an exaggerated pause. You look, no, I know you're the type to keep things to yourself. Sometimes, it sucked having a best friend who could read you like a book. But Ino had misread this time. Sakura had no idea what had given her the impression that she was still hungover from Ken. She thought she was perfectly fine. In fact, she felt great. She told Ino that, but the latter only smiled distractedly and patted her back, telling her that it was her life, and Sakura knew she had given up. For now. It still clouded her thoughts, though. And then a loud voice shattered her concentration. Sakura was chagrined to hear her name yelled out by an excited-sounding Naruto. Look it! He sprang at her the moment he spotted her descending down the stairs. Sakura almost sneezed as a half-crumpled daffodil was thrust into her face. Behind it, Naruto was beaming, and behind him, Inoichi looked amused. Boss gave me a free flower! Bemused, Sakura looked toward Inoichi for an explanation. The man simply shrugged. Don't look at me. She gently pulled Naruto's hand away so she could see his face. That's great, Naruto. He looked so overwhelmingly happy that she chose her words particularly carefully, as if she were speaking to a child. But it's just a flower. I'm sure you've seen one before. Yeah, but this is the first time someone's given me one. He chirped brightly. Sakura's eyes widened, but she didn't say anything. It seemed to her that Naruto had missed out on so many things. At that moment, she was filled with a powerful sense of gratitude towards the small things that she took for granted. Naruto handled his flower with utmost care, smelling it and stroking the petals. It was hard to believe that he carried so much pain with him. Being a survivor of war must be harsh. Here you go. She blinked. Once again, the flower had filled up 3/4 of her vision. For me? Yep. Sakura hesitantly accepted it, admiring it for a moment before looking back at Naruto. But it's the first flower you've received. Don't you want to keep it? His elation had toned down a little, and as if he knew he had acted quite silly, Naruto scratched his head, laughing. You just became the first girl I've ever given a flower to. She was not nearly as stunned by this. Many adolescent boys were too proud to tolerate being seen with flowers. Sakura was warmed by Naruto's kindness. He really was a good person. She smiled. Make sure you work hard, okay, Naruto? Yes, ma'am. Inoichi pointed his new recruit to the door which led to the storeroom. Naruto gave her a thumbs up before disappearing inside. Breathing in the daffodil's fresh scent, Sakura looked over her shoulder, still smiling. Ready to go? Ino slung her bag over her shoulder and gave a brief nod. It's your life, forehead, she reminded. Mao, you're so boring today, Wanky. What did you call me? It didn't take long for Naruto to settle into a comfortable routine. On weekdays he would get up early and prepare for work. He didn't know when it started and he wasn't sure if he or Sakura had brought it up before, but it had become an unspoken rule that whoever got up earlier made breakfast. Naruto often tried to fill that role but was usually beaten to the punch. Sometimes he had to wonder if Sakura did it on purpose. After breakfast, they would walk down to the flower shop together. If Kazuo happened to be home at the time, he would drive them, but that didn't happen a lot. Unsurprisingly, Naruto preferred to walk. Sakura didn't seem to mind waiting at the shop. She would sit there, watching him work, or go upstairs and find Ino, but she never failed to accompany him. He waited for her to leave him on his own, expecting the day to arrive within the week, but Sakura continued to walk with him, and never once uttered a word of complaint. You make me feel really bad. he said to her on the weekend while he watched her examine some carrots. She inspected him with a faint spark of amusement. Not this again. No, really. You and Kazuo are doing all these things for me. You buy me clothes, you feed me, find me a job, make time for me, and I haven't given you guys anything. Naruto forgot what he was going to say when his eyes flickered to Sakura's face. Why are you smiling? I'm smiling? No, I'm not. She reached across him for a plastic bag. You were smiling, I saw it. You're seeing things, Naruto, she said lightly. She flashed him a grin. You just did it again. Why, what's so special about a smile? He paused to think. I dunno. This time, Sakura burst into laughter. An elderly woman in an adjacent aisle squinted at the young couple and began muttering to her husband, who was clearly more absorbed in picking grapes. Controlling her giggles, Sakura tugged on her companion's jacket and motioned for him to follow her. Frowning, he went back for their trolley and lengthened his strides until he had caught up with her. I'll tell you something, Naruto? He waited. You're just special. And she smiled. He didn't even bother asking after that. The Harunos definitely saw something in him. He hoped they weren't wrong. At the shop, Naruto was mostly responsible for stacking boxes and taking care of the plants. Ino's mother sometimes took him to one side and taught him the properties of each flower. He absorbed the knowledge with surprising enthusiasm, and even borrowed a notepad from Sakura to catalog the lessons. No one, not even himself, would have fathomed that Uzumaki Naruto had a passion for gardening. It took Inoichi many frustrating hours, but Naruto eventually learned to use what they called a mobile phone. He had been given one of Ino's, apparently one of many. It was no bigger than the size of his palm with a cover that flipped open to reveal a small screen and keypad. And it was pink. Although he understood that it had been given to him to ensure that he didn't get lost on a delivery again, Naruto's pride kept him from using it too frequently. Besides, after he had confided in her, Sakura took him to a different part of the town every day on the way home, and he soon developed a general understanding of the area. Naruto liked his job. The Yamanakas were friendly enough, despite the first impression he had received from Inoichi. The man was not much of a talker most of the time, and that suited Naruto just fine. He enjoyed working alongside Inoichi in the greenhouse. Ino's father reminded him of one of the jounins he had cooperated with during the war. The two of them gradually built up a mutual sense of respect for each other. It still surprised Naruto to think back and realize how easily he had been accepted, especially by the adults. It had taken him many years of effort to gain the acknowledgement of his village. These people didn't know that he bore a menacing demon inside him, and he was determined to keep it that way. He would sooner die than let the monster attack these people. He knew who he was, though. He remembered where he was from, that sunny village he had grown up in. It was not easy for him to put his experiences behind him. Who could just shrug off over a decade's worth of memories at will? Certainly not Naruto. He continued to toss and turn at night, sleeping badly when he most needed his rest. He was a veteran of war. Once, suspended in a round between unconsciousness and waking, Naruto had heard the door open at night. He knew it was Kazuo, come to investigate the moans that even the blonde boy knew he was issuing. Yet the man did not mention it the next morning, and Naruto did not bring it up. When he returned to his room later the same day, he found a small potted plant by the window. Noticing that his dreams were disturbing him less and less, he went up to Kazuo and thanked him. The man arched an eyebrow and gave no comment, but Sakura had confirmed that she had seen her father enter the study. Grown men had strange ways of expressing themselves, Naruto reflected. And maybe, he continued to muse, I can get used to a life like this. Still, if there was one thing he could not ward away, it was the feeling of safety that was gradually enveloping him in a drowsy embrace. There was no need to arm himself with non-existent weapons, and he no longer regarded every stranger with suspicion when he was walking alone. He couldn't help but relax. But it was so peaceful here that Naruto could not shake off the feeling that something was going to go terribly wrong. Sakura was getting used to walking out of class at the end of the school day to the sensation of Ino nudging her arm. Moreover, the sight of Naruto leaning against the far wall, flipping through the small notepad she had lent him, was becoming awfully familiar. He was always there waiting for her regardless of all conditions. Even weather. Mao, you shouldn't have come if you didn't have an umbrella, Sakura chastised as she hurried over and ushered him under her umbrella. I'm not hauling you home if you get yourself sick. Sheepishly wiping his face, Naruto grinned. I can take a bit of rain. After all, I'm a real man. In response, Sakura just rolled her eyes, teasing him. He took her bag and, being taller, reached for the umbrella as well. How long are you going to keep this up? She asked him. Keep what up? This. Coming over to walk me home every day. Don't you get tired after work? Naruto chuckled as if the mere notion was ridiculous. Let's just say I don't run out of steam as easily as you think. I know you promised, but must you take it so seriously? I take all my promises seriously, he told her in a level tone. He watched her from the corner of his eye. Unless you don't want me to come anymore. I'll stop if that's what you want. They waited at the crossing. Sakura thoughtfully pressed the button. No, she said after a while. I like having you around. Really? You sound surprised. She laughed. He gave a small smile. I can't help it. Not a lot of people can put up with me. Even my friends thought I was annoying. He said it cheerfully, but Sakura heard a hint of nostalgia and lowered her head. She wondered what had become of Naruto's friends. With all her heart, she hoped that they had not met the same fate as his parents. He had through so much already. Step back. With no idea what was going on, Sakura felt herself pushed back, away from the road. Naruto swung the open umbrella in front of them just as a bus swept past and sprayed water all over the pavement. The girls who had been walking behind them shrieked as their socks were soaked. Hee hee, lucky I saw this on TV. Naruto shook their umbrella and brought it over their heads once more. My hero. She praised him. Not for the first time, Sakura was glad that Naruto was around. He was such a wild card. The rain came down heavier, beating down on their umbrella. The two of them huddled closer together and walked a little faster. Sakura could see no further than 5 meters in the heavy downpour and relied solely on Naruto's hand on her elbow, trusting him to know where he was going. He did. Kazuo's car was parked outside the house and they entered to find the man sitting on the couch, rifling through papers in his briefcase. He looked up when the two teenagers came in. Is it still raining? It's pouring. Sakura grimaced as she peeled off her wet socks. The hem of her skirt was drenched from the water she had kicked up in her fast walk. The bag Naruto handed her was surprisingly dry, though. Naruto shook his head like a wet dog. Where do I put the umbrella? Spread it in the bathtub to dry. And take a shower while you're at it, Naruto. Leave your clothes in the basket. There was a tone of authority in Sakura's voice that he didn't dare defy. She stopped by her father's side on her way upstairs. Are you working a night shift today? Kazuo gave a nod which his daughter returned before climbing the stairs. Although he had witnessed many of these silent exchanges between the two, Naruto was still taken aback by the absurd relationship the Harunos shared. If he didn't know better, he would have thought that they were in constant disagreement. But no, he could tell that Kazuo doted on his daughter. Naruto was a little envious of Sakura. He was envious of anyone who had a stable family. You'll be mistaken for a coat rack if you stand there too long, kid. Naruto returned to the present and felt Kazuo's eyes on him. I wish you'd stop calling me that, he grumbled. I call lots of people that. The man brushed past him and leaned over to put his shoes on. Naruto turned to watch him. You don't call Sakura that. My head would be a little wobbly on my shoulders if I did. Sakura doesn't like being treated like a child. If he had been expecting a hesitant response from his audience, Naruto was disappointed. Kazuo didn't even miss a beat. I'm off. Take that shower sometime this year, alright, kid? Hi. Just as he turned away and felt chilly wind breezing through the open door, Naruto remembered the item in his trousers pocket and quickly latched onto the door. Wait. I've got something to give you. A skeptical look adorned Kazuo's roughened features. It was as close as curiosity as the man could get. Naruto found what he was looking for and brandished a crumpled envelope. Putting down his case, Kazuo took it and had a look inside. His eyebrows rose higher. My first paycheck. Naruto laced his hands together behind his head and smiled. I said I'd pay rent. I'm not sure how much it's worth here, but it's something, any? What followed was a stretch of meditative silence during which Naruto found himself the subject of Kazuo's intense gaze. Just when he was beginning to shuffle his feet around, uncomfortable, the man's eyes softened. All of it's here, isn't it? He sighed when Naruto nodded quickly, too eager to please. Sometimes Kazuo had to stop and marvel at the alien he had picked up. You're not going to last a day out there by yourself, kid. Naruto blinked, and then folded his arms over his chest. Oh, I can take care of myself, Kazuo. Really? I had no idea. Here. Kazuo extracted a couple of notes from the thin bundle and tucked the envelope into Naruto's hand. The boy fumbled it. By the time he safely regained his balance and looked up, Kazuo was already closing the door again. Kazuo, I wanted you to dash. Keep some for yourself, Naruto, the doctor said gruffly. He chuckled when his charge continued to protest, and reached back to ruffle the spiky blonde head. You're a good kid. Now go get dry. I'll see you tomorrow. Naruto nodded without knowing why, and when he came to his senses again he found himself staring at the grainy pattern of wood on the door. A second of clueless thoughts later, he wrenched the door open and bolted out. He was too late. Kazuo's dark vehicle was nowhere to be, no, it had stopped at the lights. Jumping over the low hedge of bushes, Naruto stood on the footpath and cupped his hands to his mouth. "Bye, Kazuo!" he hollered down the street. The light changed and Kazuo's car began to move. Naruto slowly lowered his hands, disappointed. He jumped as if shocked when a loud honk sounded. Grinning, his head snapped back up. Kazuo's arm was raised in the air in a vague wave. Naruto brightened and furiously waved back, standing in the rain until he could no longer see the car. The rain had receded a little, but the droplets of water still plastered his already damp hair to his face. Naruto swept his bangs back, smiling widely. Sakura was standing at the door, shaking her head at his antics. "Take a shower, you," she said, throwing a towel at his face as he came up the steps. I'm going. Naruto remembered at the last moment to take the umbrella. He left it in the bathtub first, and went into his room for a change of clothes. Sakura had organized his belongings into drawers for him. It had surprised him at first to find his underwear sorted as well. He'd had many awkward run-ins with Sakura before, but it seemed the girl was impartial to folding his boxers. She must take care of Kazuo's laundry as well. Thinking in the shower had become one of the stranger habits Naruto had adopted here. He adored the seemingly inexhaustible warm water. He hummed as he lathered soap onto his body. He was steadily gathering confidence. He had a job, a roof over his head, and more than just the bare necessities. Now, it was actually plausible when he thought of his predicament, and told himself that he could do it, that he could survive in this world. As if the great Uzumaki would give up, he grinned. Of course, he owed Kazuo and Sakura. If it hadn't been for them, Naruto would be out there in the rain, huddled with the homeless. The blonde had to admit that he had luck on his side. Maybe Kami had taken pity on him. During the war, Naruto had coaxed himself into a guarded mindset. He tried not to grow too attached to his comrades, painfully aware of how much it would hurt him if he returned home without them. It was like losing a limb each time, and he didn't have that many to spare. As such, the fondness Naruto had for his new friends felt somewhat foreign and strange. It awakened the trusting child that had been forced into the backdrop. Being around people who were warm-hearted and accepting melted any barriers he had thrown up to protect himself. They made him feel alive. Is it wrong of me to think this way? He questioned of the darkness in his mind. He had friends in his own time, people he had fought through life and death with. Sasuke, Gaara, Kakashi-sensei, Ero-sennin, weren't his bonds with them supposed to take first priority? Naruto thrust his head under the running water and shook it to clear his mind. He turned off the water and got dressed. His stomach growled and fantasies of hot ramen filled his mind. There were still a few packets of shrimp ramen left. His mouth practically watered. Ramen on a cold day was absolute bliss. He would have gone on to make his dream meal, too, if he hadn't emerged in the hallway and heard a distinct groan from behind Sakura's bedroom door. Finding the sound rather out of character, Naruto stopped for a moment, listening. Groan. Thud. Groan. Thud. His ear was pressed against the wood now. What was she doing in there? So hard. Dear Lord. Naruto had to bite the collar of his shirt to keep himself silent. In broad daylight? Had she forgotten that he was there as well, or did she not mind? He hadn't thought Sakura was that kind of girl. Looks could be so deceiving. After a particularly loud groan, he swallowed and rapped his knuckles on the door. Sakura? Things quietened down on the other side. What? She called back. She doesn't even sound embarrassed. I am not sure if you should be doing this. Doing what? Kazuo's not going to like it. I'm not gonna tell him. But, he won't like it. Naruto felt his face burning. He could hear how lame he was. He was making a fool out of himself. Again. Doing what? There was no mistaking it now. She was annoyed. He wet his lips, feeling ill at ease. He probably should have left it. He really had a knack for getting himself in these situations, didn't he? You know. He laughed unconvincingly. Having sex in the house. Complete and utter silence. What? Naruto's spine snapped him into a rigid stance, and he heard himself shouting. I'm sorry! I know you don't want anyone to know because it's really, embarrassing, but I just thought that Kazuo wouldn't approve and dash. He was still babbling when the door banged open. Not registering Sakura's livid blush, he rambled on, unable to stop, as she raised a pillow over her head and smacked him. She was shrieking as she continued to beat him to the floor. He couldn't even make out what she was saying. I'm sorry! he yelled each time she hit him. On his 16th apology, Sakura threw the fluffy weapon down at him and hoarsely sucked in a breath. Naruto cautiously peeked up at her, holding the pillow in front of him as a shield. "I'm sorry," he repeated uncertainly. Her glare was hot enough to set his hair on fire. Say something, you're scaring me." She looked ready to blow up. Then she breathed deeply and untangled her fingers from her hair. "I can't believe you!" she all but shouted, and stomped back into her room. Naruto looked around the door. "Is he under the bed?" he whispered. Sakura's glare had him backtracking. Gomen, so you weren't having dash?" "No!" Seeing him flinch, Sakura grimaced and further regulated her breathing. Her cheeks were burning up. "Naruto, just, no." "Oh." They stared at each other, dragging out the silence. And then they exploded in laughter. Naruto's knees hit the ground and he wrapped his arms around his stomach, guffawing uncontrollably. Looking across, he could see specks of tears shining on Sakura's face. "Oh!" she cackled, gasping for air. She slapped his arm. "That's all you could come up with? Was I supposed to say yay?" He fanned his face, still snorting, and sat up. He smiled over at Sakura, catching her respective grin. She swept her hair away from her face and shook her head again. "I can't believe you," she repeated, giggling. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Although it had been entirely accidental, he enjoyed making Sakura laugh. She was always so mature. Her carefree laughter was rewarding. He smiled gently. "So what were you doing if you weren't having a hormonal rush?" he asked, keeping a straight face. Her eyes shone with humor when they flickered up at his. Stifling another round of laughter, Sakura picked up a small block of wood and tossed it into his lap. He looked over it with curiosity. It was rectangular in shape and slightly larger than his hand. Turning it over, he saw that one side had been clumsily chipped. He looked up, arching an eyebrow. "It's hard," Sakura said defensively. "What's it for?" "School. I'm doing woodcraft." There was a small tool on the floor. It was a thin blade braced by an equally meager wooden handle. He could instantly tell that it was weak metal, not even on par with the second-rate kunai that he had been tricked into buying during his pre-genin days. Naruto brought it up to the light to inspect. His nose twitched. A copper-like trace clung to the knife blade. "Did you hurt yourself, Sakura?" He frowned. For a moment Sakura was puzzled. Her expression became one of surprise when she looked down at her left hand. "Oh. Oops," she muttered, looking around for tissue. "This is all your Naruto?" She felt his fingers close on her wrist as he tugged her hand closer so that he could see the wound. Glancing at his face, she saw that his frown had deepened. His eyes were alight with vague concern. Sakura watched him with dull interest. Her father had made the same face when she had returned home with a bloody knee in second grade. "It's not too deep," Naruto was murmuring. He pulled her to her feet, taking her by surprise. Sakura stared at his hand, wrapped loosely around her forearm. He was unexpectedly strong. Barely 10 seconds later, she greeted at her own reflection in the bathroom mirror. "I'll be back. Run it under cold water," he told her. "Mao, it's not that." He had already turned and left. "Serious." Sighing, Sakura turned on the tap and washed off the blood, staining the water a peachy color. Naruto was acting like he was the medical expert here. She was the one whose father was a doctor. Despite the amount of blood, it was only a shallow cut, not even visible unless Sakura stretched her hand. A small smile broke through her demeanor when Naruto carefully applied a plaster to her index finger. "Am I allowed to go now, Doc?" she teased. He pretended to consider. "You're free to go, but remember, if your finger shows any signs of falling off, you must come to me immediately." "My, that's serious, isn't it? Now you freaked me out. Can I stay overnight?" Sakura laughed shortly. She held up her finger. "Thanks." "I didn't wrap it too tight, did I?" he asked as they walked back to her room. "Yes. It's so tight my finger is falling off already." She elbowed him in the side. "I'm glad you didn't pass out on me." Naruto tucked his long limbs into a cross-legged position. "Bah! I don't faint that easily," he dismissed assertively. He leaned forward when Sakura picked up the wood and blade again. "What are you making?" "Totoro." She was scowling as she twisted the small knife. I see. He nodded wisely, pretending that he understood. She wasn't fooled. "It's a character from a movie." "Ah." He sat there and watched her work for a few minutes, making small talk to fill in the silence. Sakura made little progress. Her hand often slipped and lessened the pressure on the knife, causing the blade to graze over the surface and slide off. He wasn't surprised that she had hurt herself. After another near injury that he had to grab her hand to prevent, Naruto gave in. You shouldn't hold your knife like that. And don't put your hand there, you're going to stab yourself soon. He reached over and adjusted her grip. Place your thumb over the back of the hilt, a little higher. Yeah, that's it. Satisfied, he sat back. He cocked his head when Sakura continued to look fixedly at him, and made a small, encouraging motion with one hand. Keep going. Both items were pushed onto him. Mind helping? Sakura asked sweetly. But beneath the sugary voice she was intrigued. She had learned various things about Uzumaki Naruto during his stay, and what she had observed put her mind to work. Naruto was not as scatterbrained as he let on. His fast reactions, sensitive perceptions and skill with utensils factored together with his occasional solemnity. It disturbed her to recognize them as traits of a weathered soldier. Realizing that he could not bring himself to turn her down, Naruto resignedly accepted the request. What am I making? She plopped a small plush toy that he had seen on her bed. It looked like an overweight hamster. You don't have to make the whole thing for me. Is it alright if you carve out the general shape? Nah, it's fine. Afraid that the blade would snap under too much force, Naruto was forced to patiently whittle down the wood. This is really bad metal, he commented when he finally managed to sever the first corner. He winced, seeing Sakura's wide eyes. Did I cut off too much? She shook negatively, and he continued. Naruto rapidly developed distaste for his assignment. The wood was tougher than the knife was capable of. Determined, he became absorbed in the crafting process and did not even notice when Sakura left the room. He was so engrossed in his work that he did not realize he had unconsciously been leaking wind chakra into the knife until the hilt shredded beneath his hand. At first he cursed and nursed his bleeding palm, the result of his directly grabbing the blade. Feeling a sense of déjà vu, he quickly stepped into the bathroom and held his bleeding hand over the basin. He applied pressure on the wound, hoping to treat it without having to worry Sakura. But when he took a closer look, he discovered his skin was mending itself right in front of his eyes. Naruto impatiently waited for the gash to close, then washed his hands and returned to the room. There, he sat and tried to gather his thoughts. He had known, and hoped, that his chakra would return, but had been too concentrated on his new life to give it any thought for the past week. Now that his rejuvenation abilities seemed to have recovered, he was not sure how to react. It doesn't make a difference, he reasoned. It really didn't. Chakra was not significant in this place. Sakura, Kazuo and the rest of the population had gotten by without utilizing their inner pool of energy. He wouldn't be surprised if they didn't even know what chakra was. He rested his back against the leg of the desk behind him and let out a long sigh. It was just intuition, but he felt that chakra was considered paranormal here. He shouldn't use it in front of anyone. But even as he came to the resolution, he was picking up the angular wedge of wood and stroking its face with a finger. The elemental chakra he had wrapped around the digit easily sliced the timber. Naruto smiled a little. Knowing that he had his strength back made him feel safe. Checking that Sakura was not around to see it, he wound his chakra into the familiar pattern of the Rasengan, allowing the miniature model to swell ever so slowly. It spun above his outstretched palm. Naruto grinned. His smile faltered when the jutsu abruptly began to expand at a rapid rate. He watched in alarm as the serene hue of his chakra bled into crimson. Naruto panicked. Was the Kyuubi reacting on his chakra and forcing its way out? But before anything drastic happened, the mutated Rasengan diminished and collapsed into itself. Then pandemonium. Instead of dissipating, the chakra he had summoned agitatedly spun around the room, throwing Sakura's belongings into disarray. Naruto shot to his feet and shouted in confusion, but he couldn't hear his own voice. There was a thunderous roar in the back of his mind. At the same time he could feel a strong pressure on his body, like he was being pulled and pushed and compressed all at once, and in different directions. With a groan, Naruto fell forward, breathing raggedly. His vision blurred and pulled in and out of focus. Sakura's room was a pool of colors, suddenly too bright for his eyes' comfort. He painstakingly raised a hand to block them out, but the colors did not disappear. He couldn't see his hand. Naruto raised his head, trying to catch sight of the mirror. The vague hues of Sakura's bed and floor shimmered. He wasn't there. What's happening to me? His consciousness was leaving him. Naruto's senses flared for the briefest of seconds, and he could hear hasty footsteps pounding toward the room. He saw the door by his head swing open. Kyuubi's frustrated howl drowned out Sakura's voice. Uzumaki Naruto fell into darkness. Sakura emptied another packet of flavoring into the steaming pot. She wasn't the biggest fan of ramen, but Naruto was the one doing her a favor. She imagined he would be hungry by now. She waited for him to be lured down by the aroma. But instead, an immense wave of foreboding hammered her down. She raised her head, stunned. It was like the air had grown thicker, heavier. A distinct humming thrummed on the airwaves. Dread like nothing she had experienced before gripped her, and Sakura was already sprinting upstairs when sounds of what could be no less than a hurricane carried down the hallway. It was coming from her room. As she stood at the top of the staircase, watching the spectral glow filter out from the slit beneath the door, seeping into the carpet, all she could think was, this isn't normal. As if her thoughts had become some sort of holy command, the strange light and thudding sounds suddenly ceased to exist. Sakura clenched her fists, feeling her sweaty palms beneath her fingers, and slowly walked towards her room. She had half a mind to laugh at her apprehension. She was behaving as if an extraterrestrial being had invaded her home. That was a preposterous idea. Naruto would have. Naruto was in that room. She flung open the door. Naruto, what dash? Her room was unrecognizable. Everything had been forced to the edges, leaving a rough circular space in the middle of the room. Two halves of wood lay in the tiny clearing. Walking over in a daze, she picked them up and looked around. He must be hiding under the bed or something, she tried to assure herself, even as she realized that it was unlikely. Naruto wouldn't do this on purpose. This isn't funny, she called. Her voice was rising. A sharp prick in her hand alerted her to the blood that was dripping from her white-knuckled fists. The wood had crumbled away, leaving her hands pierced with splinters. The pain felt remote. Naruto, I'm bleeding. She tried again. Her heart sank when he didn't respond. Naruto. But she knew he was gone. He woke. The ceiling of stalactites dripped water, creating small ripples in the shallow water that he was lying on. He stared numbly up at them, his eyes empty, until a single drop fell onto his forehead, followed by another on his cheek, and another, and chakra. Rasengan, red-black. Naruto lurched into an upright position, gasping. He looked down at his hands, relieved to see that they were actually there. Every other part of him seemed solid as well. Whatever that episode had been, it was over. He relaxed, but just a little. He was in a hollowed cave of some kind. His clothes were drenched and heavy with water. Light shone in through the entrance, and reflected the wavering water onto the walls. Naruto saw that the cave was empty. Nothing stirred. Outside, he spotted lush plantation. A jolt of familiarity propelled him onto unsteady feet. Where am I? This was clearly not in the vicinity of the town he had been staying in. Kazuo and Sakura were nowhere to be seen. His lips thinned as he worried about their safety. He wouldn't be able to live with himself if his actions had brought harm to them in any way. His head throbbed. What did I do anyway? Don't move! Naruto instinctively reached for a kunai and bit out a curse when he remembered that he was empty-handed. The cold steel of the sword pressed against his neck bit into his skin. I said, an expressionless voice intoned. Don't move! Narrowing his eyes, Naruto realized that he had no other option but to obey. He stilled himself. Good. Now tell me what you are doing here. First, I want to know what kind of team wants to hack off my head. Naruto growled. He had been careless, softened by the lack of conflict. If given the chance, he vowed never to make the same mistake again. His foe was silent. Naruto heard him inhale sharply. Turn around, the man ordered. There was an essence of haste about the command. Scowling, Naruto slowly dragged his feet. The katana never left his neck and imprinted a faint red mark on his throat. What luck, he had to run into someone filled to the rim with experience. All right, what do you dash? He choked on the same astonishment that filled the Sharingan eyes staring at him. Sasuke!